The King's Avatar audiobook by Kevin Chapter 1621. Would it kill you to let me look cool for a bit? Translator, Namyumi. Editor, Namyumi. This match. Samsara's home game. It seems. Pan Lin thought carefully about he should word things but wasn't able to find the right words in the end. In reality, he didn't need to explain anything. Most of the viewers had the same feeling as him. This was Samsara's home game. Samsara had chosen this map. They should be the ones taking advantage of the terrain. It was supposed to be their biggest weapon. But the result? What everyone saw was Yiziu taking advantage of the trash room to stall 3 of Samsara's players. On the other end, at this alleyway, Samsara's 2 players were supposed to pincer and trap Tang Rou, but in the blink of an eye, the situation was flipped. How did everything turn out this way? No one could think of an answer. Samsara hadn't underestimated their enemy. They had sent 3 players to the trash room to deal with one Yiziu. How could that be underestimating the enemy? At the alleyway, when chaotic cloudy mountain and moon luring frost formed a pincer onto boundless sea, everyone thought that it was hopeless for Tang Rou. But Tang Rou had other ideas. He had danced around them, staying alive until dancing rain arrived. This couldn't be considered a mistake from Samsara. Tang Rou was playing incredibly well. A great performance happened when you made outstanding plays in unordinary situations. Samsara's ambush had been set up meticulously. They had started by checking their surroundings through the windows. After noticing Dancing Rain's movements, they thought of this plan. Then, Fang Minghua's laughing song went a switch with Du Ming's moon luring frost. When Tang Rou's boundless sea appeared, the two didn't act too hastily. They patiently waited for Tang Rou to go in deeper and for Mucheng to move farther away. Every detail had been considered by Samsara. Every part of the plan had been executed well. Even so, they had failed to trap Tang Rou and inflict heavy injuries onto him like they had liked. Now, they were the ones in a dangerous position. "Retreat," Lu Boyuan said decisively. Rushing forward was an option. However, the terrain wasn't favorable for them. Rushing through attacks from Tang Rou and Mucheng was too risky. Lu Boyuan hadn't forgotten that Happy didn't only have Tang Rou's Chi Master and Mucheng's launcher. There was also the threat of Kaiao Yifan's Phantom Demon Ghost Blade. Maybe he was waiting at the exit at the front. If they successfully made their way out from the alleyway, they would instantly be enveloped by multiple ghost boundaries. As a result, they could only retreat. They had to retreat. Lu Boyuan didn't say anything. He had chaotic cloudy mountain turn around and run, while paying attention to moon luring frost's situation up ahead. Moon luring frost had been shot out of the air by Dancing Rain. As he fell, boundless sea flitted past him with his head turned back. From the looks of it, he planned on looting from a burning house. Lu Boyuan needed to make sure that moon luring frost could run away, so that Du Ming wouldn't need to be rescued. Sure enough, boundless sea stopped. He was a dirty Chi master who loved to be sneaky. But at this moment he was making a huge show, gathering Chi around his 2 palms. Lu Boyuan resisted the urge to charge at him because he knew that boundless sea was situated outside both his and moon luring frost's attack range. That was why boundless sea was so fearless. That bastard Tang Rou was too infuriating. It was like he was purposefully trying to annoy them. Dragon Wave. Boundless sea made his move. The gathered Chi transformed into a dragon, which flew out towards his 2 enemies. Moon luring frost had just landed on the ground. Du Ming saw the warning from Lu Boyuan and rolled back. By the time he got up, the dragon wave was roaring towards him. Du Ming didn't even think. He immediately had moon luring frost jump towards the wall and then jump again. Unfortunately, Rising Dragon Slash had just been used and was still on cooldown. Du Ming had no way of using the same method to send moon luring frost onto the rooftop. The double jump was just to avoid the attack for as long as he could. Dragon Wave could be controlled by the user. Du Ming didn't think he could actually dodge it fully. But with this jump, Tang Rou would need to focus on him so that he could aim his dragon wave properly. That would at least buy some time for Lu Boyuan. The two players on Samsara hadn't forgotten to take care of each other. Lu Boyuan didn't have chaotic Cloudy Mountain leave first. He made sure that Du Ming could also escape. As for Du Ming, he was using his character's position to help Lu Boyuan escape. If Lu Boyuan didn't have chaotic Cloudy Mountain run away, then he would be wasting Du Ming's kindness. There was no time to think about all that though. Chaotic Cloudy Mountain turned around and sprinted away. Boom! An explosion from behind him. Chaotic Cloudy Mountain's footsteps didn't stop. He looked behind him and saw that moon-luring frost had been shot by dancing rain again. Du Ming hadn't forgotten about Su Mucheng's presence. He had predicted that dancing rain's attacks wouldn't stop. But in this narrow alleyway, there really wasn't anywhere for him to run to. Du Ming had moon-luring frost swing his sword at the missile, but the explosion still hurt him. Moon-luring frost lost his balance again, with smoke coming off from him as he fell. Then Boundless Sea's dragon wave swallowed him whole. Lu Boyuan felt terrible. He wanted chaotic Cloudy Mountain to turn back so that he and Du Ming could fend them off together. But he knew very well that doing so would be unwise. He was abandoning Du Ming, but this was because he had no other choice. Their goal was to win, and winning depended on the entire team. As long as one person stood at the end, they would be the winners. For the win, to remain as the champions. Lu Boyuan brainwashed himself, constantly repeating these words to himself. He didn't have chaotic Cloudy Mountain turn his head back, instead using all his might to run away. He hated his decision, but he trusted that his decision was correct. He wasn't playing just for himself. He couldn't make decisions based on his own likes. Every one of them was carrying the burden of the dreams of the entire team and countless fans. Ahead is the exit. Keep going. Chaotic Cloudy Mountain rushed out from the alleyway. Only then did he turn his head back. Even though everything about Du Ming's situation pointed to disaster, Lu Boyuan still felt hope for him, hope that Du Ming could catch up to him. But no. Moon-luring frost was far behind him. Fire and light flashed again and again. Endless chi mixed in with the explosions. Moon-luring frost's sword light glinted tenaciously. Again, Lu Boyuan resisted the urge to turn back. But, you can do it. Du Ming typed out in the team chat. He was the one fighting. He was the one who was trying to escape, but Du Ming was the one encouraging him. Lu Boyuan couldn't keep watching, afraid that he wouldn't be able to resist his urges any longer. Chaotic Cloudy Mountain turned around and immediately rushed towards the support zone. Seeing chaotic Cloudy Mountain leave, Du Ming felt at ease. Moon-luring frost was hit by a blast again. Du Ming tried his best to stabilize the situation, but the attack disrupted his efforts. Moon-luring frost tumbled to the ground. How embarrassing! Du Ming laughed bitterly. He had been hoping to put on an outstanding performance, especially in this match against Happy. But it looks like this was it. To the left was a wall. To the right was a wall. He couldn't use many of his skills. As for charging towards them in a straight line, as long as his opponents maintained a certain distance away from him, he posed no threat. The two on Happy were too experienced. They were carefully taking advantage of the terrain. Chi Masters and Launchers didn't have a lot of strong CC abilities. As a result, the two didn't intend on pinning Moon-luring frost down. The two were doing their utmost to deal as much damage to Moon-luring frost. If it happened to work out, then they would also try to make it hard for Moon-luring frost to move around. I won't make it. His health was dropping fast, and there was still quite a way to go before he could leave. Du Ming was already certain that he would die before he escaped. I'll cheer up my teammate first. As for me, I'll just have to contribute as much as I can to our win. Moon-luring frost suddenly rolled backwards. Instead of moving to the exit, he went for Boundless Sea. Tang Rou immediately had Boundless Sea retreat, while sending out a cloud-pushing palm. Jump! Moon-luring Frost got up and jumped, but soon he heard the sound of a cannon shot. Falling light blade. Moon-luring Frost dropped down, the artillery shell whistling past his head. Falling blossom form. This level 75 skill had extremely high priority in the air and had a knockdown effect. Du Ming was using it to get down. Sword petals filled the air, preparing to cut down Boundless Sea. But Boundless Sea simply retreated in an extremely dirty manner too, dodging this attack. Would it kill you to let me look cool for a bit? Du Ming cursed at Tang Rou. He was obviously unhappy that his attack had missed. I'm almost dead. Can't you just let me leave a good impression with one final display of might? What's cooler than dying at my hands? Tang Rou responded slickly. Boundless Sea pulled back his hands and then pushed out. Air rend palm. Chi condensed into the shape of a handprint. With a paw, it struck Moon-luring Frost, stunning him. Flash burst. Tang Rou wasn't polite at all. Seeing how close they were, he immediately let out a high-level skill. The chi couldn't expand in this narrow alleyway. It could only burst forth in what little space there was. After Flash burst came Qigong Blast. Chi filled the alleyway, turning the entire area hazy. Dancing Rain's artillery support came down in coordination with Tang Rou's assault. Fuck. Du Ming couldn't help but leave a profanity in the chat. Along with a yellow card from the referee, he left the field. Chapter 1622, Cruel Hand Speed. Chapter 1622, Cruel Hand Speed. Translator. Namyami Editor. Namyami TL Note. I accidentally skipped a chapter. I've fixed it and uploaded the previous chapter the moment Du Ming left the battlefield. The stadium erupted with wild cheers. The cheers came from the away team stands. The happy fans that had followed the team to their away game couldn't contend against Samsara's fans. If you weren't listening carefully enough, it was almost impossible to hear the shouts and cheers for Happy. However, despite their feeble existence, the happy fans never gave in. They were doing their best to cheer for their team. Too many people had scoffed at the thought of Happy reaching this step. Some of them even thought of Happy making their way to the finals was a lucky fluke. Losing to Samsara would be a glorious end to their season. But the happy fans that had followed their team to Samsara's home stadium disagreed. They had come to cheer on their team despite the overwhelming opposition because they thought that there was glory in defeat. What they wanted was for Happy to win, to become the newly crowned champions. Even if others might laugh at them for overestimating themselves, their thirst for victory wouldn't waver. No matter how weak the team was, all of them dreamed of becoming the champions. Happy had struggled their way through the season. Glory in defeat, a glorious end. They didn't need any of that. They wanted to win. Only by winning and becoming the champions would they be satisfied. This was why Happy absolutely could not lose this match. It was their final chance. But no matter how determined they may be, they knew that today's match would be extremely challenging. Happy was playing in their away game and their opponents had a one-game lead. Happy carried an enormous amount of pressure going in. A lot of people might have forgotten about this aspect. In their eyes, there was no pressure for Happy because losing was normal. Happy shouldn't have any hopes of winning, but reality trumped rhetoric. Happy was showing everyone that their efforts weren't just to welcome defeat. Despite being on the back foot, they were still aiming to win. 2-point lead in the group arena. 1-person lead in the team competition. It didn't matter what had led to this situation. It didn't matter what the outcome of this match was. Right now, how stimulating. Happy's performance was too stimulating. Happy's fans felt like they had been injected with drugs, especially the ones cheering from the stadium. The noise that they made was a challenge to the devilish home crowd. So what if we don't have as many people as you guys? We're winning. We have a huge 3-point lead. From a match perspective, Happy's lead was enough to leave their opponents speechless, especially after killing off Du Ming's Moon-luring Frost with such ease. Mucheng's Dancing Rain had taken 0 damage, and the damage that Tang Rui's boundless sea had taken was from the pincer by Lu Boyuan and Du Ming earlier. This lead had been earned almost perfectly. But how could the Samsara fans endure the overjoyed expressions on the happy fans? Even if they had nothing to back up their cheers, they weren't going to let themselves be outdone. The noise in the stadium reached a new high. Samsara's fans had been able to overwhelm Happy's fans in the end. However, they were just relying on their numbers' advantage. The contribution from each individual couldn't compare to a tenth of a Happy fan. Hurry up and do something. It would be a lie to say that Samsara's fans weren't worried, especially seeing how the opposing fans were so delighted. Even if they could overwhelm their opponents in noise, it didn't give them a sense of victory because victory wouldn't be decided by which side shouted louder but by the players on stage. If their team couldn't beat their opponents, then their cheers and shouts were just empty words. Come on, come on. Samsara's fans thought to themselves, but there didn't seem to be any possible turning points right now. Du Ming's moon-luring frost had died. Fang Minghua's laughing song had automatically entered the field, and Lu Boyuan's chaotic cloudy mountain was hurrying over to convene with him. Protecting the healer was a bigger priority than counterattacking. Did they need to search for hope on the other side? Trash room. The conflict between Yiziu and Samsara's three players hadn't stopped. There hadn't been any direct clashes, but Yiziu being able to escape again and again was enough to astonish everyone. But in return, Yiziu had suffered greatly, whether it was himself as a player or his character. His tempo was starting to falter. His control over Lord Grimm was no longer as precise as before. Zhou Zekai, Sun Xiang, Jiang Batao. Any one of these three players had the ability to contend with Yiziu one-on-one. None of them could be underestimated. However, Yiziu needed to fight against the three of them by himself. The amount of energy he put in wasn't nearly as simple as 3 times the amount. This could be seen from the hand speed statistics. Yiziu's hand speed averaged 340 APM overall this round. As for the team competition itself, his stats were calculated starting from when Lord Grimm started clashing with Samsara's 3 players. His hand speed for the team competition averaged 510. 510. For many pro players, this was their limit, but right now, it was Yiziu's average. Seeing this number, the viewers couldn't help but gasp in astonishment. But to the pro players watching, they had forgotten to be astonished. This average hand speed of 510 was a form of cruelty. It was cruel to the opponents and cruel to Yiziu himself. His opponents were dealing with this hand speed, although to be more accurate, it was more the other way around. Yiziu needed this hand speed to deal with the pressure that his 3 opponents were giving him. This cruelty was being undertaken by Yiziu alone. Too reckless. Even Han Wenqing made a note of Yiziu's craziness, and he was always fearless in battle. Zhang Xinji furrowed his brows, carefully observing the curve given by the data. After all, 510 was an average. His hand speed wasn't constant. There were ups and downs. As a result, Zhang Xinji tried to look for relatively clear flat areas. He reckoned that Yiziu was resting during these flat periods. That was the only way he could maintain an average hand speed of 510. But no, the hand speed curve was extremely messy with huge ups and downs. From this chaotic curve, Yiziu's difficulties could be seen clearly. His actions were being forced out by his opponents. If he didn't keep up this hand speed, Lord Grimm would already be a corpse. And from the changes in the curve, Yiziu was having more and more trouble holding on. Samsara's 3 players was aware of this point, so even though they knew that Yiziu stalling all 3 of them was unfavorable for Samsara as a whole, they didn't make any adjustments. When Du Ming's moon-luring frost fell and his name turned gray, they even became more decisive with their attacks. This was the price of perseverance. It was only by killing Lord Grimm would they make up for this price. Soon. Lord Grimm still had 52% of his health left. He still had more than half of his health left. However, the three on Samsara could feel Yiziu's reaction speed and response slipping. They knew that Yiziu was on the verge of defeat. Yiziu's nearing his limits, Huang Xiaoshan said gravely. Yu Wenzhou didn't make any objections. Sitting in front of them, Wang Jixi and Tiny Herb's hand speed expert Liu Xiaobi were also silent. But on the other side, there were people who wanted to say something but were hesitating. Lu Guaning, Zhu Yunhai, Wen Kebe, Gu Zhe, Zhang Yeli. Team Heavenly Swords had come to watch the match as well. Even though all of them had powerful and wealthy family backgrounds in the pro circle, they were the younger generation. Their skill couldn't compete with the top players. But while their seniors had come to the same conclusion, these five disagreed. When Wen Kebe heard Huang Xiaoshan say he's nearing his limit, he couldn't help but say something. But when he saw that no one was paying attention to him, he hesitated and decided against it. "What is it?" someone asked. It was Sun Zhiping who had come with them. "I don't think this is God Yiziu's limit," Lu Guaning said. "What?" Sun Zhiping was doubtful. "You guys all think this is limit." Wen Kebe had been too afraid to speak up because everyone else had come to a different conclusion than him. "It seems like you guys know something," Sun Zhiping asked. The five on Heavenly Swords looked at one another. "We've experienced his hand speed before," Lu Guaning said. Sun Zhiping laughed. "Yiziu's hand speed. Hadn't he experienced it 9 years ago? At that time, Yiziu had been at his peak. No matter how unwilling Yiziu might be or how great he still was, his age was there. Certain things couldn't be decided by pure willpower." "That's not what I mean. We saw his hand speed through different means." Lu Guaning saw that Sun Zhiping had misunderstood him. They were rookies. How could they dare to talk about experience facing someone as senior as him? "Different means," Sun Zhiping didn't understand. "Piano," Lu Guaning said. "What?" Sun Zhiping was very interested. "Piano, piano," Wen Kebe affirmed. "What about it?" "God Yiziu can play it." "Are you thinking of someone else?" Sun Zhiping wasn't the type to waver, but hearing them talk about Yiziu playing piano, he was having trouble believing them. "Of course not. During last year's All-Star Weekend," Lu Guaning quickly told them about their dinner party that night. "The tempo in a piece is fixed, so based on the amount of time that Yiziu used to finish the piece, we can calculate his hand speed. Playing piano is different than playing glory, but at least for piano, Yiziu's max hand speed should be." Lu Guaning suddenly stopped at the crucial moment. "How much?" Sun Zhiping asked. 900, Lu Guaning's voice trembled. He knew the answer beforehand, but he was still scared by it. 48 seconds, a steady 900 appum. Chapter 1623, A Serious Mistake. Chapter 1623, A Serious Mistake. Translator, Namyami. Editor, Namyami. 900. Impossible, Sun Zhiping blurted out. He might not know that much about playing piano, but he had fought against Yiziu in game before. Yiziu's hand speed was indeed very fast, and right now, the three on Samsara had forced him to an average hand speed of 500. 900. What did that mean? It was a hand speed nearly twice as fast as his current one, and that wasn't a peak but an average over 48 seconds. "It's true though," Lu Guaning said. He could understand Sun Zhiping's reaction. They had the same reaction as him when they saw it. In the beginning, they just felt like Yiziu was playing really fast. They had no concept of the exact numbers up until Lu Guaning calculated it. The number had nearly shattered their eyes. 900. Lu Guaning and the others might not be as experienced as Sun Zhiping, but they could imagine how terrifying such a hand speed was. Later, they looked through a bunch of Yiziu's matches, but they never saw him come close to such a high hand speed in any of them. Playing piano was different from playing glory. The left and right hand did completely different things for one. The five of them could only explain it with this reasoning, but they truly had a hard time convincing themselves. After all, 900 was a terrifying number. Pro players averaged around 300. When a more complicated or chaotic event happened in the team competition, their hand speed might go up. For example, Yiziu was playing 1v3 against Samsara and had been forced to a hand speed of 500. Even so, 500 was a huge difference from 900. Maybe it was because Piano and Glory were different that Yiziu couldn't reach a hand speed of 900 in Glory. But there were plenty of numbers lower than 900. Even if you subtracted 200 or 300, it was still a hand speed of 600 or 700. 500 shouldn't be his limit, right? That was their opinion at least. After Sun Jiping accepted that Yiziu had reached an APM of 900 when playing piano, his view was no different from theirs. That guy's still holding back. Sun Jiping thought about it for a moment, but immediately shook his head. This was the finals. Playing 120% wouldn't even feel like it was enough. Hold back. What a joke. Maybe it is because you can't actually get to an APM of 900 in Glory. Sun Jiping couldn't think of any other reasoning, but even if was using this reasoning to convince himself, from this moment on, he began to look forward to what might happen next. Who cares if there's a difference between piano and Glory? From this moment on to Sun Jiping, Yiziu's highest average hand speed was 900. How terrifying. In that case, did his true maximum break past 1000? Sun Jiping was thinking of it from a Glory perspective. He didn't know that on that day when Yiziu had played piano, he had just been playing it for the sake of playing fast. There were no changes in rhythm like there were in Glory. So what is the answer? Hurry up and let us see it. While the other pro players felt like Yiziu couldn't hang on for much longer, Sun Jiping and the five on Heavenly Swords had different thoughts. While their conversation had gone on, Yiziu's situation worsened. Under the siege from Samsara, Lord Grimm was forced into a corner, an actual corner in the trash room. There was no place for him to hide any longer. Victory is in sight. The Samsara fans had started getting excited. Even though they had lost a player first, if they could take down Lord Grimm, the trade would be worth it. Similar to how Mucheng and Tang Rou had dispatched Du Ming without taking much damage, it would be the same for the three on Samsara. They hadn't taken much damage in their fight against Yiziu's Lord Grimm. Now, it just depended on how troublesome Yiziu's final struggle would be. Careful, Jiang Badao warned in Samsara's chat. They had to keep cautious to not give Yiziu any chance to deal damage to them. They didn't immediately attack. Instead, they waited until every one of them was in the perfect position, so there wouldn't be any openings when they started their attack. "It's over," Sun Xiang declared. He had always longed to beat Yiziu. He wanted to surpass him. Unfortunately, they were currently in a 3v1 situation. It probably wouldn't be considered a win in his eyes, but it wasn't important. It was true that Sun Xiang wanted to surpass Yiziu, but he wouldn't bicker too hard over it. In the end, his ultimate priority was to win the match. If they didn't win, even if he beat Yiziu on his own, it wouldn't have any meaning. Dragon breaks the ranks. One autumn leaf charged forward with the powerful momentum of a battle mage to seal off Yiziu's final hopes. Surpassing you will have to wait. Today, the most important thing is to win this match. Sun Xiang's one autumn leaf charged forward carrying this conviction. Suddenly, his screen turned dark. What's going on? Sun Xiang nearly leapt out of his seat. Had his computer malfunctioned? That was his first thought, but he soon discovered that it wasn't that his computer had crashed. It was because there was an indicator showing on the screen that his character couldn't see. Blind. Where did it come from? He had been carefully observing each and every movement from Lord Grimm. When had he used a skill that inflicted blind? Unable to see his opponent, Sun Xiang couldn't control his dragon breaks the ranks. He heard a gunshot. Zhou Zekai's cloud piercer had started firing. However, those bullets didn't seem to be going towards where he was going. Lord Grimm had already run over there. Sun Xiang was utterly confused. The crowd had exploded too. Through their spectator view, when one autumn leaf charged forward, a hazy pitch-black light quietly descended. The area covered by the dark light was surrounded by faint magical symbols in a giant circle. Sun Xiang's one autumn leaf had entered this zone. Jiang Badao's empty waves was at the edge of it too. As a result, their screens instantly turned black. The two of them had been blinded. This is Ghostblade's dark boundary. But with how carefully they had been watching over Yiziu, there was no way they wouldn't notice him casting a Ghostblade boundary, let alone letting him finish casting it. What's going on? Most of the crowd was just as confused, up until Zhou Zekai's Cloud Piercer started firing not towards Lord Grimm but towards a corner of the trash pile. When he moved laterally to get a better view, their confusion was cleared up. 1-inch ash. Kaio Yifen's 1-inch ash had appeared here. The crowd went wild. Practically no one had noticed. On one side was the battle between Tang Rou, Su Mucheng, Du Ming, and Lu Boyuan. On the other side was Yiziu, Zhou Zekai, Jiang Badao, and Sun Xiang. It was already difficult enough deciding which of the two battles they should watch. How could they bother paying attention to someone who wasn't a part of either battle? When did Kaio Yifen get there? How did he get there without anyone noticing him? Many of the viewers blanked. Their last impression of 1-inch ash was him splitting up with Tang Rou and Su Mucheng to search for the two on Samsara. After that, he had been forgotten. And now, his sudden appearance had rescued Yiziu from what had seemed to be certain death. The three on Samsara had made a mistake. Their highly focused attention had turned into their weakness. They had only been following Yiziu's every move. A beautiful stall, Wang Jixi sighed. His explosive 510 hand speed wasn't just to hold on against the combined assault from Samsara. He had responded back strongly to capture the complete attention of the three from Samsara, so they would make this mistake. Kaio Yifen's 1-inch ash came to the trash room and got into this position without any of the players on Samsara noticing. This was a mistake, but no one could blame Samsara for it. The viewers, who could see everything if they chose to, had been absorbed by the intense fighting. They hadn't noticed Kaio Yifen either. How could they expect the three on Samsara to when they themselves couldn't? Sun Xiang and Jiang Batao had been blinded. For a moment, they didn't know what had happened. With the two of them blinded, Yiziu was able to easily make his way past them. As for Zhou Zekai, who hadn't been affected by the dark boundary, he could only shift his attention to 1-inch ash. The control capabilities of a phantom demon were too powerful. Right now, it was just a dark boundary. If Kaio Yifen was left alone to do as he pleased, an ice boundary, ash boundary, silence, and so on would come one after the other. If that happened, they would be the ones in trouble. Kaio Yifen. He had once been a nobody in Tiny Herb, and now, in the finals, he was the one who Glory's number one, Zhou Zekai, was personally taking care of. The people who had taken note of Kaio Yifen's arduous path to his current state felt deeply moved. The spectating pro players couldn't help but glance at Tiny Herb for their reactions. Kaio Yifen had been given up on by Tiny Herb, and now he had reached the finals ahead of them. What were the Tiny Herb players thinking right now? You can do it, Yifen. Gao Yingji didn't say anything, but he was quietly cheering for his best friend. Many of the pro players had also overlooked Kaio Yifen due to the two separate battles taking place, but Gao Yingji wasn't one of them. No matter what else was going on in the match, he would always be mindful of Kaio Yifen. When Tang Rou sent the message asking for help, Su Mucheng and Kaio Yifen had both turned around. He had originally thought that Kaio Yifen would be heading towards Tang Rou to help him, but to his surprise, Kaio Yifen had gone towards the trash room. A brilliant decision. What outstanding situational awareness. Gao Yingji heard the praise pouring out from his seniors beside him. He was happy for Kaio Yifen and proud. During their time together in Tiny Herb, the two of them were often compared to each other. Gao Yingji shined with his fame as a prodigy. On the other hand, Kaio Yifan was completely overshadowed by him. From the start, it seemed like Kaio Yifan would never reach the same heights as Gao Yingji. But now, Kaio Yifan had gone ahead to the finals before him, and he had made an outstanding play on stage. Now, I'm the one chasing after you. I hope that we'll be able to meet in the finals someday, Gao Yingji thought to himself. Chapter 1624, No Longer Alone. Chapter 1624, No Longer Alone. Translator, Namiyami. Editor. Namiyami, his best friend, was proud of him, but what about Kaio Yifan himself? He was calm. He was considered a major threat by Glory's number one. Perhaps this might have had him shaking in excitement back when he was just a no-name player in Tiny Herb, but now it wouldn't. Because this was the battlefield, and there was no such thing as being of a higher or lower standing here, only victory and defeat. On the battlefield, you should be focused on one thing, how to claim victory. This was something he had learned from Glory's number one, the other Glory's number one. 1-inch Ash leaped back, dodging the first wave of Cloud Piercer's bullets. Joe Zekai had Cloud Piercer continue his advance, but that was when he suddenly realized something. They had neglected to consider Kaio Yifan, but was Kaio Yifan the only one they had missed? Wasn't there another member of Happy that had yet to appear? Kaio Yifan's 1-inch Ash was here, so what about the other one? Cloud Piercer suddenly jumped up, turning his body around in the air, continuing his attack as he scanned the area. Whoosh! A pure white flame lit up the area he just jumped away from. Sacred fire, as expected. As he spun, he searched for the quickly fading glimmer of holy light that marked the use of sacred fire. Though it was weak, it stood out in this dim lighting of the warehouse. It wasn't just Kaio Yifan who had come, but also Happy's healer and Wenyi and his cleric Little Cold Hands. 1v3. That was just now. It was now a 3v3 and Happy had a healer. However, whether Kaio Yifan or Wenyi, their reputation couldn't compare to any of the three members of Samsara. In terms of strength, as well, they were at a disadvantage. Even if they had a healer, this wasn't necessarily an advantage. Still, compared to before, this was already a massive difference, especially with how Happy's two had suddenly launched their assault when Yiziu most needed it, completely destroying Samsara's rhythm. Jiang Batao and Sun Xiang had lost their camera sight, having been blinded, but that didn't mean that the team chat would disappear as well. They soon got the gist of the current situation from Joe Zekai in the team chat. No matter what, leaving the dark boundary was their current top priority, but even for pro players, being blinded made it nigh impossible to accurately orient themselves. Sun Xiang's one autumn leaf had just finished a dragon breaks the ranks, which brought him near to the edge of the dark boundary. Unfortunately, it also brought him to the trash room wall, and he couldn't move forward anymore, not even a step. This direction wouldn't provide an out to the dark boundary. Luckily, Sun Xiang had a vague impression of the area, so he had one autumn leaf turn. Even without being able to see anything, one autumn leaf still managed a perfect 180-degree turn. These seemingly insignificant details were a great indicator of a player's skill. Those who understood sighed in admiration, yet then Lord Grimm flicked his arm and sent a grenade one autumn leaf's way. Sun Xiang couldn't see, so he had no idea that Yiziu was taking advantage of his blindness. The watching Samsara members wanted nothing more than to charge up there and warn him, but then there was a bang and a rumbling explosion. Joe Zekai had gotten Cloud Piercer to destroy the grenade. In the end, not only did the grenade not hit one autumn leaf, the explosion it made even acted like a guide for Sun Xiang. Although relying on sound meant that he wasn't as precise as he would have liked, one autumn leaf did head in Lord Grimm's direction, evil annihilation levered in front of him. Even blinded, he never lost his offensive pose. Boom! But immediately afterwards, one autumn leaf was consumed by light and fire. Yiziu had opened fire with the myriad manifestations umbrella again. Anti-tank missiles used the boom of the grenade as cover to fly at one autumn leaf. The two weren't that far away, so even if Joe Zekai wanted to warn him in the team chat, it would be too late. One autumn leaf still ended up hit and staggered back several steps from the explosion. While blinded, it was already impressive that he could keep his balance, but his sense of direction was completely shot. Joe Zekai wanted to send messages to guide him, but he didn't have a chance. His split in attention had Kaio Yifen's 1-inch ash safely finishing the cast of a boundary. Then when he tried to go and help, 1-inch ash's phantom ghost's power fell and a chill instantly spread into a boundary. He had summoned an ice soul, ice boundary. Crack, 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 the sound of ice crystals breaking crawled up Jiang Batao's empty waves, freezing him solid. Originally, Jiang Batao was in a better situation than Sun Xiang. At the very least, he didn't get blocked by a wall. After being blinded, he had empty waves back up rapidly. With just a few more leaps until the edge of the boundary, he was hit with 1-inch ash's ice boundary, and just happened to get frozen too, stopping him within the dark boundary. Blinded and immobilized, Jiang Batao had basically been taken out of the game for now. Joe Zekai's Cloud Piercer turned to attack 1-inch ash again, but this time Yiziu's Lord Grim leaped at that heap of trash, drawing his sword in midair and striking. Cloud Piercer bent backwards to dodge the sword light, a grenade already heading for the leaping Lord Grim. But Yiziu didn't have Lord Grim dodge. With a flash of light, he sheathed his sword, and the myriad manifestations umbrella became tonfas. Lord Grim's body trembled, boom. The explosion enveloped Lord Grim, but was unable to stop his leap. Reinforced iron bones. Yiziu had activated this skill for Lord Grim and brute forced his way through. As for the damage, he didn't care, because he was no longer fighting solo. And Wenny's little cold hands darted forward and sent Lord Grim a holy cure without any hesitation. Pure white light enveloped Lord Grim before blooming outwards. This was the visual effect of a critical heal, even managing to overpower the visual effect of the explosion for a moment. 24%. This instant cast, high healing holy cure with a lengthy cooldown of 5 minutes had crit and restored Lord Grim's health by 24% instantly, making Samsara's 3's efforts seem insignificant. They had struggled with Lord Grim for so long, only managing to take out 48% of his health. Now half of that had been annihilated by a single holy cure from Wenny's little cold hands. The Samsara fans could practically feel their hearts breaking. With Yiziu's Lord Grim advancing forcefully, Joe Zekai's Cloud Piercer had no choice but to retreat. He had an important task right now: protect Jiang Batao and Sun Xiang's characters the best he could. He couldn't let them fall completely into 1-inch ash's boundaries. 1-inch ash was casting again. Joe Zekai could see that. Without caring about his own situation, Cloud Piercer's gun aimed towards 1-inch ash. Unexpectedly, Lord Grim's form darted forth in front of him, using his body to block his attack, courageous and fearless. Joe Zekai had no time for playing games with him. Cloud Piercer rolled to the side, once again putting 1-inch ash into the line of fire. Bang! The gunshot rang out, but Joe Zekai then saw the bullet bounce. Lord Grim's myriad manifestations umbrella had stretched over, open, knocking the bullet away. However, Cloud Piercer had 2 guns. His right gun might have been sealed, but what about the left? The mouth of his left gun was outside of myriad manifestations umbrella's block, but he couldn't see. Bang! The gun went off without being able to aim properly. Joe Zekai could only wager a guess. Unfortunately, this bullet didn't hit, heading somewhere at least 3 body units away from 1-inch ash. Whirlwind kick. Joe Zekai ignored the result of that shot and quickly had Cloud Piercer kick out. Lord Grim had already changed the myriad manifestations umbrella into its shield form, so the class was switched to priest as well. Reinforced iron bones was a fighter skill, so it lost its effect under the priest class. In that moment, Joe Zekai still had such a clear judgment. He didn't panic at all due to the disadvantageous situation. This kick still ended up blocked by Lord Grim's myriad manifestations umbrella, but then Cloud Piercer's left-hand gun, Shattered Frost, erupted with gunfire. Whirlwind Kick had two goals. One was to try and swept Lord Grim to the side. The other was that the downwards leaning movement gave him a small window to strike. Just one glance and it was enough for Joe Zekai to lock onto his target. Whirlwind Kick and his view of 1-inch Ash were quickly blocked by the myriad manifestations umbrella, but in that moment he had locked 1-inch Ash's position into his mind. Cloud Piercer's left hand was extremely steady. Even though Joe Zekai couldn't see, he knew that his gun was aimed at 1-inch Ash. Bang! A gunshot, and then the bullet flew, just brushing past the myriad manifestations umbrella. This was just a normal attack, but it was enough to interrupt any casting. If the caster moved or was hit, the casting would be interrupted. There was enough time. From the Phantom Ghost's power coming off of 1-inch Ash's blade, Joe Zekai could tell he was summoning a Silence Boundary. Silence Boundary sealed the skills of the characters that were caught within. With such a disgusting effect, it was obviously counted as a high-level skill, and thus the cast time was longer. However, the flashes of light that rose soon after told Joe Zekai he had still failed. His bullet hadn't hit. Silence Boundary was similar to Dark Boundary, but the visual effects were more intense, making it murky inside the boundary. It couldn't blind people, but this murkiness made things hard to see. Dark Boundary, Ice Boundary, Silence Boundary, 3 overlapping boundaries. They couldn't see, couldn't move, and now they couldn't even use any skills, only normal attacks. However, Joe Zekai couldn't help them. Yiziu didn't want him interrupting 1-inch Ash just now, which was why he was on the defensive, getting in the way all the time. Now, with Silence Boundary out, the myriad manifestations umbrella was immediately thrust forward at his face. Shield Attack. This skill had a dizzy effect, so even if it didn't deal damage, it was a bad idea to take it. Cloud Piercer hurriedly rolled to the side and glanced towards 1-inch Ash, seeing Little Cold Hands standing guard there. It seemed that Little Cold Hands had taken the bullet for 1-inch Ash just now. 1-inch Ash began to cast a 4th Ghost Boundary. Chapter 1625, not perfect, but the best. Chapter 1625, not perfect, but the best. Translator. Namiyami Editor. Namiyami Ghost Boundaries wouldn't last forever. A smart phantom demon would plan out when and where to place down their ghost boundaries to maintain an uninterrupted flow of crowd control on the battlefield. But right now, Kaio Yiffin's 1-inch Ash was placing down ghost boundaries one after the other. Dark Boundary, Ice Boundary, Silence Boundary. All of these were ghost boundaries with powerful crowd control. Usually, these boundaries would be linked together such that the opponent would always be under the effects of one of them. However, Kaio Yiffin had set all 3 down on top of each other to completely seal off Sun Xiang and Jiang Batao. 1-inch Ash was even in the midst of casting a 4th Ghost Boundary. This sort of setup was often only seen during critical moments, but today, because of 1-inch Ash's abrupt arrival, the Dark Boundary had caught Samsara completely off guard. Sun Xiang and Jiang Batao were robbed of their sight temporarily as a result. His Dark Boundary was extremely effective. Adding an Ice Boundary and a Silence Boundary on top of it didn't seem to be necessary. Was Kaio Yiffin a bit too hasty? Seeing that a 4th Ghost Boundary was about to be placed down, Pan Lin couldn't help but ask. It was a dangerous situation. With this being his first time on the grand stage, it's hard not to be a bit nervous. Li Yibo was quite understanding, but he was also implying that he agreed with Pan Lin's viewpoint. "Li Qiuwen, what do you think?" Before Kaio Yifan even finished setting down the three ghost boundaries on top of each other, the pro players were already discussing the issue. In the end, everyone pushed the question onto Li Qiuwen, who was considered the #1 phantom demon. "If it were me, just one dark boundary would be more than enough." Li Qiuwen spoke his thoughts. At first, it sounded pretty much the same as Pan Lin's and Li Yibo's viewpoint, disagreeing with Kaio Yifan's excessiveness. However, the other pro players could hear the difference. Because he said, "if it were me." Not long after finishing the sentence, Li Qiuwen looked to be a bit hesitant. After saying for a bit, he added, "And Xinji." And Xinji. Xinji was, of course, referring to Zhang Xinji. Why'd he mention him? The pro players quickly caught on. Li Qiuwen meant switching and Wenyi with Zhang Xinji. In other words, if it were Yi Ziu and him and Xinji too, he would be confident that just one dark boundary would be enough. Everyone clicked their tongues in disdain at Li Qiuwen. Yi Ziu, Li Qiuwen, and Zhang Xinji. That was a lineup even grander than Sun Xiang, Jiang Badao, and Sun Xiang. Zhang Xinji was a cleric too. Their class composition would be superior to Samsara's too. Li Qiuwen was basically saying that under these circumstances, one dark boundary was enough to take control of the battle. The two on the field were Kaio Yifan and Wenyi, who weren't as experienced or as skillful as Li Qiuwen and Zhang Xinji. Just relying on the two of them as support, Yi Ziu might not be able to hold off the three from Samsara. This was why Kaio Yifan didn't hold back and try to be as efficient as possible. He quickly placed down one ghost boundary after another to ensure that Sun Xiang and Jiang Badao would be completely imprisoned. He wasn't looking to control the battle for a long period of time, but rather for a quick burst. Was this because he was lacking confidence? Of course not. Even the #1 phantom demon, Li Qiuwen, couldn't guarantee that he could do it with just one dark boundary. He even needed to add in Zhang Xinji to it. This wasn't a lack of confidence. It was a careful consideration of the situation, a decision based on a clear recognition of his own limits. While everyone was still in discussion, the densely layered ghost boundaries suddenly burst open. The ghost souls danced about, creating foul wind and bloody rain, stealing away empty waves and one autumn leaf's life. After Kaio Yifan placed down the 5th ghost boundary, he had 1-inch Ash activate Ghost Feast right before his first dark boundary disappeared. Nervous? Not at all. The placement of the 5th ghost boundary and the perfect Ghost Feast was the biggest proof. Anyone who thought that he had been placing down ghost boundaries out of panic was completely wrong. The pro players couldn't help but applaud Kaio Yifan's performance. His play wasn't perfect. Perfect would be slowly placing down ghost boundaries at the right time to take complete control of the battle until the battle was over. But it was the pinnacle of what was possible given the circumstances. In this situation, he had made the best possible decision and executed it brilliantly. It wasn't possible to have done it any better. Beautiful. Very beautiful. His outstanding situational awareness allowed him to clearly examine the problem from an overall perspective. He had taken into consideration that he and Wenyi were relatively weak. He had also taken into consideration that Yi Ziu was exhausted after a long battle against 3 of Samsara's players. Then, he made his decision based on all of these factors, a decision that was making everyone gasp in amazement. The pro players exclaimed in admiration. At the same time, they couldn't help but glance at Team Tiny Herb. They had let go of such an incredible player. They must be regretting it, right? Especially since Tiny Herb had a Ghostblade player. Zhou Yebai, Tiny Herb's Ghostblade player, was also a phantom demon. Right now, he was already regretting coming to watch this match. Everyone else was staring at him, their gazes cutting into him like a dagger. Kaio Yifan used to be a nobody in their team, and now he had actually grown to such an extent. He just had to change classes to a ghost blade and choose to be a phantom demon too. Everyone was constantly glancing at him, openly showing pity that Tiny Herb had let go of Cairo Yiffin and treated him as the real nobody in Tiny Herb. Zhou Yebai felt extremely uneasy. He really didn't want to admit that he was worse than Cairo Yiffin, but he also knew that if he was confident, he wouldn't be feeling uneasy. He was afraid that his teammates would also compare him to Cairo Yiffin. He was afraid that they would look down on him and then cast him away just like how they cast away Cairo Yiffin before. Focus on the match. A voice suddenly interrupted Zhou Yebai's thoughts. He turned his head to look at who said it and saw the serious expression on his captain's face. Zhou Yebai relaxed and stopped feeling afraid, because he could tell that his captain, Wang Jixi, wasn't affected by the other pro players' views. Wang Jixi was only unhappy with him because of how he was letting it get to his head. He wasn't here just for fun, sitting there and enjoying the lively finals match. He was here to watch the teams play and learn from them. He had been thinking too much. Cairo Yiffin was playing incredibly well, but he wasn't the best. Li Xuan was better. The only difference was that Cairo Yiffin had once been a part of Tiny Herb, but who cared? What was important was that he worked hard to better himself and do what needed to be done. Competition was everywhere in the pro scene. Cairo Yiffin was just one of the many competitors. He was used to this sort of competition. Why should he be afraid now? He should be working hard so that one day he would win praise from everyone else just like Cairo Yiffin had done. He's really making me a bit jealous. How annoying. Zhou Yebai no longer felt nervous because of Cairo Yiffin, but rather became more motivated. If even a nobody could come this far, then why couldn't he? After collecting his thoughts, he calmed down and focused on the match again. Triggering Ghost Feast also meant sacrificing the crowd control on Samsara. While the two Samsara players were being devastated by Ghost Feast, Cairo Yiffin had 1-inch Ash retreat. Shadow Clone Technique. Seeing 1-inch Ash's retreat, Yiziu immediately followed. Lord Grimm completed the hand seals for Shadow Clone Technique while in combat against Zhou Zekai. His real body teleported away, and he ran away together with Wenyi's little cold hands. Cloud Piercer chased after them furiously, but Lord Grimm lay the myriad manifestations umbrella on his shoulders, protecting his back, preventing any interference from his pursuer. Sharpshooters had powerful attacks, but their crowd control was rather weak. They controlled the pace of the battle through attacks. But because Lord Grimm was holding his shield up, none of his attacks were landing. In the blink of an eye, Lord Grimm and Little Cold Hands made a turn at a trash pile and disappeared from Cloud Piercer's sight. Zhou Zekai didn't stop his pursuit, though. The Ghost Feast was ending, and Jiang Batao and Sun Xiang would quickly be back to normal. It was their time to regroup and counterattack. They couldn't give Happy a chance to rest. The spectating pro players thought the same. Zhou Zekai had a clear understanding of their situation. Cairo Yiffin had burst them down because he wasn't confident that they could win in a prolonged fight. Samsara knew this as well. Zhou Zekai wasn't going to let his opponents leave so easily. Cloud Piercer rushed to the edge of the trash pile and jumped. Using aerial gun, he glided through the air and made the turn. Lord Grimm and Little Cold Hands were once again within his sights. Zhou Zekai didn't have Cloud Piercer jump down from the trash pile. As a sharpshooter, the tall trash pile was an advantageous position for him to shoot from. Bang, 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 bang. As soon as he landed on top of a new trash pile, Cloud Piercer's dual guns began firing furiously towards Lord Grimm and Little Cold Hands. On the other end, Jiang Batao and Sun Xiang had gotten away from the Ghost Feast. Their characters rushed out with traces of the ghostly power still lingering on them. They saw Cloud Piercer shooting, pointing them in the right direction. They gnashed their teeth in anger as they hurried over. Rising Dragon soars the sky. Seeing Cloud Piercer's shooting trajectory, Sun Xiang immediately deduced where Happy's characters were located. One autumn leaf swung his evil annihilation and used a rising dragon soars the sky at that trash pile. 3v3 were not afraid. Sun Xiang and Jiang Bada were quite determined, but the viewers really wanted to tell them, 3v3. Not for much longer. Su Mucheng and Tang Rou were almost there. Chapter 1626, An Existence Surpassing Common Sense. Chapter 1626, An Existence Surpassing Common Sense. Translator, Namyami. Editor, Namyami. Samsara's falling apart. The pro players started discussing the issue spiritedly. There had been two separate battles taking place. On Happy's side there was Caio Yifan and Wenyi. Now, Su Mucheng and Tang Rou were on their way to help after resolving their battle. Happy's two sides were gradually coming together, beautifully linking up with each other. As for Samsara, they had failed to take down Yiziu in a 3v1. They had failed to take down Tang Rou in a 2v1. Then, Su Mucheng arrived and worked together with Tang Rou to take down their Du Ming. It wasn't that Samsara didn't care about linking their two sides together, but rather that their link had been thoroughly severed by Happy. As for how, the pro players looked at each other in dismay. One side had been stalling 1v3, while the other side had been stalling 1v2. What type of tactic was this? This was a star tactic. Happy versus Samsara. Samsara was the only team in the alliance with 4 all-stars. Of these 4, 3 of them were ranked among the top 10. Samsara couldn't shine any brighter, yet they had actually been stifled by a star tactic from Happy. The standard star tactic was to rely on the team's star player to fight against the opposing team at a numbers disadvantage. By doing this, his teammates would conversely have the numbers advantage in their battle, which would then be used to win. There could be 2 or even 3 separate battles taking place, but in either case, there would be one battle where the team would be at a numbers disadvantage, and another battle where the team would be at a numbers advantage. The battle where there was a numbers disadvantage would depend on the star's superior skill to make up for it. This was the crux of a star tactic. There had indeed been battles this match where Happy was at a numbers disadvantage, but Happy didn't use it to get a fight where they had the numbers advantage. Happy had undoubtedly employed a star tactic. The usual tactic wasn't seen, not because Happy didn't have a choice. Su Mucheng, Tang Rou, and Caio Yifan had gone to intercept Happy's healer with clear intentions of fighting Samsara with a numbers advantage. It was just that they ended up in a situation where the terrain for the fight was advantageous enough that they didn't need the numbers advantage. Since Caio Yifan wasn't needed, he went to go help Yiziu, who was stalling 1v3. Yiziu was the reason that Happy had the upper hand. From the hard numbers of the 4 attackers on Happy, Yiziu's Lord Grim might have the lowest DPS and the lowest health. However, he was the key to why Happy was able to obtain this lead. Without his efforts as the foundation, none of what happened would have happened. This was Glory's #1 player, a single player holding off against 3 top 10 players. Among these was Joe Zekai, who was ranked first on the All-Stars list. Using the word star to describe this performance was too degrading. This was a superstar, an ultra-superstar. No one knew how to describe using words what Yiziu had done because it didn't seem like something a human could do. It wasn't like Happy had never employed this type of tactic before. You wouldn't even need to look too far back. The most recent case was in their first game against Blue Rain in the playoffs. Happy had relied on Wei Chen to stall Blue Rain, 1v2. It could be considered a star tactic, but it wasn't a very thorough one. Wei Chen hadn't actually established an equilibrium in his battle. In reality, his role was more as a sacrifice. He had sacrificed himself to stall for as much time as possible so that the others on Happy could accomplish their true objective. It was a bit different from a star tactic on a fundamental level. On the other hand, in their away game today against Samsara, Happy was employing a true star tactic. Moreover, in this star tactic, Yiziu needed to hold off against top players. In fact, their current fame even surpassed Yiziu's. Unfortunately, the three top players on Samsara had been held off. In front of Yiziu, their star power appeared dim and dull. The star tactic wasn't just a tactic, but also a display of skill, using overwhelming skill to fend off against superior numbers. This was the core of the star tactic. It was hard to argue against this point, and it was precisely for this reason that no one thought Yiziu would be able to succeed against the likes of Sun Xiang, Jiang Badao, and Zhou Zekai. How could he not be defeated? To everyone, it wasn't even a question. Samsara was no exception. That was why they didn't think they would fall apart. They thought that they would be able to quickly make short work of Yiziu. Who would think otherwise? It was practically common sense. The pro players watching the match had thought the same. But Yiziu was an existence that surpassed common sense. The situation seemed to be getting more and more disadvantageous for Samsara, but the players themselves were still quite upbeat. Rising Dragon soars the sky. Sun Xiang's one autumn leaf swung at the trash pile. The loosely piled up trash didn't form much of a resistance. The magic transformed into a dragon and pierced straight through the trash. However, the grab priority Rising Dragon soars the sky was quite an imposing attack. Such an explosive force created quite a lot of noise. Yiziu and Enweni didn't act like they hadn't noticed. Dodge. Lord Grim and Little Cold Hands immediately moved away from the garbage heap. Then, they saw dots of light coming out from the trash. The light became more and more dense until the dots of light converged together to form a brilliant ball of light that seemed to be dissolving everything it touched. Rising Dragon soars the sky. A flying dragon tore through the garbage heap. If Yiziu and Enweni had reacted slightly slower, they would have likely been devoured by the attack. Rising Dragon soars the sky missed, but it had disrupted Yiziu's and Enweni's movements. Zhou Zekai was watching them intently from behind. How could he miss such an opportunity? Bullets rained down. Jiang Badao used the bullets as cover to close the distance. Light wave slash. Empty waves rushed out and swung his sword, using the Spellblade's fastest wave slash skill. The attack was tricky too. It wasn't directly aimed towards Lord Grim or Little Cold Hands, but rather right in the middle between them. As a result, if the two wanted to dodge the attack, they would need to dodge in opposite directions. It would force the two of them apart by 1 or 2 steps of distance. Don't look down on a distance of a few steps. In this situation, it was a heavy blow. This separation would likely make it so that the two of them would have to escape from their pursuers on their own. Yiziu had the ability to contend against the three of them, but Enweni, without Yiziu's protection, he would certainly die. So the attack couldn't be dodged. Hua, the myriad manifestations umbrella opened up. Because of the burst from Cloud Piercer, the shield form wasn't a good option. However, right now, it was the only option. The durability on the umbrella was quickly being depleted. Happy had the upper hand. Yes, from an overall perspective. However, they first needed to get past this current obstacle. No matter how you looked at it, they were facing one of Glory's strongest trios, and none of them had lost any of their fighting strength. Chapter 1627. Stake everything in one throw. Chapter 1627. Stake everything in one throw. Translator. Namyumi Editor. Namyumi and Enweni definitely wasn't the best in terms of technique, but his ability to assess the situation was absolutely at the top. Lu Boyuan saw that Du Ming had stayed behind to stop Tang Rou and Su Mucheng from reaching him, so he resisted the urge to turn back and rescue Du Ming. What about Enweni? He was in a similar situation, being protected by Yiziu. He didn't hesitate and immediately had Little Cold Hands run away. Yiziu was thankful. Chen Guo didn't like this part of Enweni, but Yiziu was quite thankful for it. A healer needed this sort of calm and rationality. In the beginning, when he first met Wenyi's little cold hands, it was his clear judgment and machine-like precision that had gotten Yiziu's attention. Later on, he discovered that Wenyi also possessed this rationality. For Yiziu, it was like buying one thing but getting another for free. How could he not be happy? And Wenyi didn't lose this characteristic of his on the competitive stage. Even if he had always been regarded as Happy's weakness, he didn't stop trying his best to seize every opportunity he saw. He had survived in Happy as their weak point. Happy had devised strategies revolving around him as the weak point. Not only did Wenyi not object, he cooperated with them earnestly. It was impossible for him not to feel a bit embarrassed or worried, but he was a rational person. He recognized that this was the best way to use him. That was why he didn't object or let these emotions affect him. He was constantly trying to improve. During this process, he wanted to make himself as useful as possible to the team. Whether it was using his strengths or his weaknesses, he would find the most suitable way to coordinate with the team. If it wasn't for his almost heartless rationality, it would be very difficult for him to achieve this goal. His rationality was the true source of his value on the team. Because of his rationality, he was able to play in a way that caught Yiziu's attention out of the countless number of other players in the game. Because of his rationality, even though he wasn't the most skilled, he knew how to do what the team needed, whether that need was a usage of his strengths or his weaknesses. Because of this rationality, he could worry but never waver when facing a difficult choice. He had persevered. 2 years ago, he had been just another player in the heavenly domain. He was someone who couldn't even make it to the elite ranks of tyrannical ambition. 2 years later, he had made his way to the playoffs. Here, he eliminated Tyranny's vice-captain, Glory's #1 healer, Zhang Xinji. Now he stood together with his team together in the finals, at the highest stage in Glory. And Wenyi was an extremely rational person, yet everything that had happened sounded like nonsense. The journey hadn't been an easy one, and it only made him treasure it all the more. He treasured using everything at his disposal to help the team win. This was why he ignored whether Yiziu's Lord Grimm lived or died. His little cold hands turned tail and ran for his life, because this was the best way for him to help Happy win. 3v3. It didn't feel like a 3v3. Kaio Yifen's 1-inch ash had taken a different route than them, and Wenyi's little cold hands and Yiziu's Lord Grimm retreated together, but during their retreat, they encountered a problem. Lord Grimm had been tossed aside so that little cold hands could get away. In the blink of an eye, it was Yiziu versus Zhou Zekai, Jiang Batao, and Sun Xiang again. For a moment, Samsara had trouble digesting this sudden change. From their understanding, Wenyi should have stayed behind to help Lord Grimm hold them off, until Kaio Yifen's 1-inch ash looped back around to their rescue. Based on this understanding, they had already planned out how they could take advantage of this somewhat clumsy cleric to trouble Yiziu. The healer needed to be protected, after all. But that cleric just threw Yiziu aside and ran away. It went against common sense. Where was the loyalty, the self-sacrifice? The three on Samsara felt uncomfortable, not at Yiziu's situation, but at their own. With Wenyi's little cold hands running away, they would once again be facing Yiziu in a 3v1. It was the exact same situation as before. They would rather have little cold hands stay behind for a 3v2. That way, they could use little cold hands to hinder Lord Grimm. A 3v2 would actually be easier for them. As a result, one autumn leaf rushed out. Sun Xiang was the one who wanted to surpass Yiziu the most, but right now, he gave up on Yiziu. With Cloud Piercer and Empty Waves suppressing Lord Grimm, he had one autumn leaf chase after little cold hands. The three on Samsara felt like this was better than focusing only on Yiziu's Lord Grimm. Yiziu was truly too troublesome to deal with. The myriad manifestations umbrella suddenly let out a cold light. The umbrella was still floating in the air, but Lord Grim had made his way to one autumn leaf's side. Shining cut. Sun Xiang wasn't able to react to it, and the shining cut hit him. Even though the attack didn't have a strong knockback, it had caught Sun Xiang off guard. One autumn leaf stumbled into the nearby garbage heap. Zhou Zekai and Jiang Batao were startled. This mix-up had come as a complete surprise. Lord Grim had made his way to one autumn leaf's side, but his weapon was still in its original position. Did he throw his weapon away? Soul guidance. Any pro player would think it was soul guidance when they saw a weapon being thrown, but that would be impossible, because Lord Grim had used Shining Cut. Although soul guidance would toss out the weapon, it wasn't a drop. The weapon was considered equipped, and only skills pertaining to the weapon's class could be used. It wasn't possible to switch weapons while using it either, but Lord Grim had clearly used a skill from a different class. If he didn't have the right weapon equipped, it wouldn't be possible for him to use Shining Cut. Had he brought along a second weapon, or maybe the myriad manifestations umbrella could be split into two. He dropped one half of it but continued to use the other half. How confusing. For now, it wasn't possible to figure out what had really happened. However, the myriad manifestations umbrella being dropped onto the ground was a fact. Jiang Batao reacted immediately. Empty waves rushed towards it without regard for anything else. The only thing in his sights was the myriad manifestations umbrella. If could pick it up, wouldn't Lord Grim become completely useless? Picking up the opponent's weapon in a competitive match, it had never happened before in the Glory Alliance. No one remembered if the competitive rules had anything regarding it. Even the veteran Li Yibo wasn't certain. He wasn't sure what to say, although luckily for him there was no time for him to say anything. Just when Jiang Batao's empty waves was about to grab the umbrella, a very unfamiliar move on the competitive stage, the myriad manifestations umbrella suddenly flipped over. There was no thrusting motion, yet the umbrella was already pierced through empty waves. Lord Grim once again appeared right before him. Impossible. How could he be so fast? Jiang Batao looked to the side out of instinct. As he turned around, Lord Grim used Circle Swing. As a result, Jiang Batao saw Lord Grim again standing where one autumn leaf had been. In his hands was a dagger, a shadow clone technique. Jiang Batao's screen turned pitch black. Blind. No, Lord Grim had thrown him into the garbage heap using Circle Swing. The garbage was physically blocking his sight. The garbage heap loosened, and empty waves plunged straight into it. His two legs were dangling in the air. The Samsara fans wanted to laugh, but they couldn't. It was extremely embarrassing. On the other hand, the pro players had no pity for him. They had started roaring in laughter. He definitely did it on purpose. Chu Yunxiu pointed at Lord Grim on-screen, laughing uncontrollably. Everyone agreed. Tossing the myriad manifestations umbrella as bait, Shining Cut to block one autumn leaf, shadow clone technique to get back, and then a circle swing to throw empty waves into the garbage heap. Everything had been calculated. If Yiziu wasn't confident he would succeed, how could he have thrown away his character's lifeline so easily? Senior Yiziu really is brave, though. The rookies couldn't manage to laugh. They had been frightened to death. Let alone a weapon as important as the myriad manifestations umbrella, the thought of throwing even a normal weapon scared them. This sort of method was truly difficult for them to accept. Even though Yiziu had probably calculated it all beforehand, matches were always full of twists and turns. What if the Shining Cut had missed one autumn leaf, and Sun Xiang counterattacked? What if while he was using shadow clone technique, Cloud Piercer hit him before he finished the seals? Although none of that happened, the possibility of a mistake gave the rookies lingering fear. That's why they say the truly capable are daring. Someone sighed. The truly capable are daring. Everyone fell silent. It didn't feel quite right. The truly capable, that was a gamble risking everything. Had that moment really been that important, that he needed to stake everything in one throw, a scare and a laugh? In the end, they analyzed the play like they normally did. Yiziu's Lord Grim had already rushed out towards Cloud Piercer, who was standing on top of a nearby garbage heap. At the same time, the sound of cannon fire boomed. Mucheng, dancing rain, she had finally arrived. Her ultra-long-range firepower was in coordination with Lord Grim's assault. The Season 4, Season 5, Season 6, Season 7 best partners were finally pairing up for the first time in this team competition. Chapter 1628, Interweaving Battle. Chapter 1628, Interweaving Battle. Translator, Namyami. Editor, Namyami. Boom. Dancing rain fired at the garbage heap, but her goal wasn't as simple as just splashing scraps into the air. When Cloud Piercer twisted his body to dodge the artillery shell, the explosion left a huge hole in the trash pile. The scraps of trash launched into the air rained down. Amidst the rain of trash and the reflection from the flames, Yiziu's Lord Grim rushed out. Bang, 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 bang. Joe Zekai hadn't given up on attacking Lord Grim. Even while dodging the artillery fire, Cloud Piercer's dual guns were aimed steadily towards Lord Grim. The fire and light from the explosions, the raining trash, and the flying bullets constructed a chaotic scene, and Lord Grim pushed his way through it. 1 step, 2 steps. Lord Grim moved swiftly, growing closer and closer to Cloud Piercer. Although Joe Zekai's Cloud Piercer was moving away to keep their distance apart, he wasn't able to do it perfectly under Mucheng's barrage of artillery shells, especially since he was against Yiziu as well. Fortunately, he wasn't alone. Jiang Batao's empty waves would need a bit of time to climb out from the garbage heap, but Sun Xiang's one autumn leaf had only taken a stumble from the shining cut. He quickly regained his balance. He originally wanted to continue chasing after Wenyi's little cold hands, but he heard the sound of cannon fire from behind him and turned to look. He saw explosions threatening Cloud Piercer and Lord Grim closing in. Help! This was Sun Xiang's first thought, but one autumn leaf rushed out in a different direction instead, continuing his chase onto Little Cold Hands. When he broke into a run, he also swung his spear towards Empty Waves, who had plunged head first into the garbage heap. Empty Waves wouldn't be affected by the attack, but the spear knocked away much of the trash burying Empty Waves, helping him out quite a bit. Sun Xiang left the responsibility of helping Joe Zekai to Jiang Batao, while he gave up on his attachment towards Yiziu. He made the more proactive choice: continue to pressure the enemy healer to suppress the entire team. Jiang Batao's Empty Waves freed himself from the trash. He looked around and instantly understood the situation. Yiziu's Lord Grim was about to reach Cloud Piercer. Jiang Batao didn't say anything and decisively swung his sword. Fire Wave Slash. Raging flames swept towards Lord Grim. Fire Wave Slash was the strongest of the wave slashes. It was quite fast too. In the blink of an eye, it had arrived behind Lord Grim. At this moment, Lord Grim jumped forward. If he continued along his current path, he would undoubtedly be hit by the flames. His figure flickered, boom, hit. The crowd erupted into applause. The Fire Wave Slash sent Lord Grim crashing into the garbage heap. Jiang Batao had gotten his revenge, but Jiang Batao felt uneasy. It hit. It actually hit. Yes, he was very surprised. The timing had been good, using it just when Lord Grim was jumping, making it harder for him to respond. However, he really hadn't expected the attack to connect. His goal had been to stop Lord Grim from continuing forward. Who would have thought it would actually hit? It shouldn't have against someone like Yiziu. Yiziu must have let it hit him. Jiang Batao was certain. Sure enough, when the flames from the Fire Wave Slash receded, all that remained was a burnt mark on the garbage heap. Lord Grim had vanished. Where did he go? Underground tunneling technique. Lord Grim suddenly popped out from the top of the garbage heap. However, Cloud Piercer had just passed by him. Yiziu didn't have Lord Grim dodge the fire wave slash. He used the momentum to make his way into the trash pile so that he could underground tunneling technique. But Joe Zekai's intuition was outstanding. Once Lord Grim lay himself against the garbage heap, he wasn't able to see him anymore. At that moment, he immediately gave up on keeping his position at the top of the garbage heap and had Cloud Piercer jump down. Missed. The underground tunneling technique wouldn't be able to touch Cloud Piercer. Was Lord Grim just going to let this opportunity go by Thawog? No. Yiziu reacted quickly. He could only see the corner of Cloud Piercer's jacket when he tunneled out, but it was enough for him to make his decision. He canceled underground tunneling technique. While in the air, Lord Grim twisted his body. A cold light swung out, falling light blade. His two hands pressed down on the sword, chasing after Cloud Piercer. The falling light blade let Lord Grim fall much faster than Cloud Piercer. Gunshot. Yiziu had acted immediately when he saw the jacket on Cloud Piercer. On the other hand, when Joe Zekai heard a sound from behind him, he immediately realized that Lord Grim had appeared behind him. It would be too late for Cloud Piercer to turn around and aim, so he placed his two guns on his shoulders and shot behind him. Bullets flew out. Sword light swept down. It was difficult to tell which one was faster, but in an instant the two characters were tangled together. Cloud Piercer's bullet shot into Lord Grim's skull at point-blank range. Lord Grim's sword pierced through Cloud Piercer's back, the sword tip sticking out from his chest. Who won? Who lost in this sort of entanglement? Even the spectating pro players couldn't immediately make the call. Lord Grim and Cloud Piercer crashed towards the ground together. Both characters seemed to have lost their balance. Then, an explosion, a magic wave. Their reliable partners had come to their support at practically the same time. The explosion swept away Cloud Piercer, while the magic wave swept away Lord Grim. The two of them separated, but their fight was far from over. Both of them had lost their balance, but everyone could see that they were both fighting to regain it. Bullets shot out from Cloud Piercer's guns. Lord Grim raised his hands, and the myriad manifestations umbrella was thrown into the air. Shooting stars rained down, Exorcist skill, Starfall. Cloud Piercer was hit by Starfall and smashed into the trash. Lord Grim was also repeatedly hit by the bullets and fell into the trash as well. Neither of them could dodge. They could only do their best to attack the enemy. In the end, the two were separated, and if they kept this distance away from each other, wouldn't Joe Zekai's sharpshooter have the upper hand? A satellite beam descended from the sky, straight down onto Cloud Piercer. Joe Zekai and Yiziu were evenly matched, but their two supports became the dividing line. When the two were unable to keep up their attacks, Mucheng's dancing rain decisively fired a satellite beam, dealing a heavy blow to Cloud Piercer. As for Jiang Ba, he could only cry. It wasn't that he didn't want to. His class didn't have that sort of attack. Lord Grim and Cloud Piercer had fallen into the trash pile. Mucheng's launcher had a way to attack from the skies, but his spellblade, waltzing wave slash. He could only send out a waltzing wave slash. The divine chains in empty waves, hands leapt into the air, forming a rainbow that dropped down onto Lord Grim. Jiang Batao had executed it beautifully. The rainbow waltzing wave slash was also pleasing to the eye, but how could a waltzing wave slash compare to a launcher's most powerful skill, satellite beam? No matter how beautiful the waltzing wave formation looked, its damage couldn't compare to satellite beams. It was just better than nothing. Lord Grim was hit by the attack and was then immediately able to stand up. As for Cloud Piercer, the satellite beam was still in place, pressing down on Cloud Piercer. The trash surrounding him was thrown into the air. The satellite beam had blasted the trash pile apart. Jiang Batao could only watch as dancing rain attacked from afar. He had no way to stop her or interrupt her. All he could do was prevent Yiziu from adding oil to the fire. Light wave slash. The wave slash went straight for Lord Grim. But Yiziu had clearly expected that Jiang Batao would attack him. After Lord Grim got up, he immediately used a movement skill to dodge the light wave slash. He jumped into the air, aerial gun, and then rotor wings. In the blink of an eye, he had reached the other end of the trash pile into Dancing Rain's satellite beam and down the hole. The satellite beam had blasted a hole in the garbage heap, and Cloud Piercer was at the bottom of it. Surrounding him was trash, and above him was a giant beam of light. He was completely immobilized. Joe Zekai tried hard to get himself some space, but before the satellite beam ended, Yiziu's Lord Grim dropped down into the hole. Papapa, Lord Grim stepped on him with Eagle Stamp. How could Joe Zekai dodge it? He could only have Cloud Piercer trade blow for blow with Lord Grim. However, Yiziu had Lord Grim activate reinforced iron bones. The bullets connected, but couldn't move him. After the Eagle Stamp, he elbowed Cloud Piercer in the forehead. And then, while the two were practically touching each other, he used all sorts of close combat techniques. The satellite beam had ended, but Cloud Piercer was in an even more precarious situation than before. The trash surrounding him seemed to be Yiziu's helpers, burying his guns. Knee strike. It hit, but Lord Grim was still in front of him. The sharpshooter martial arts skills didn't have strong knockback. There was no way for him to clear a way out by himself. Light. The surrounding trash suddenly lit up. Nebula Wave Slash. Jiang Badao used the Spellblade's level 75 skill, destroying the trash from the outside. He was planning on fishing Cloud Piercer out. The light from the Nebula Wave Slash continued to penetrate the trash, but before the last push, flames swept towards him. Chapter 1629. The Match Point Outside the Equilibrium. Chapter 1629. The Match Point Outside the Equilibrium. Translator. Namyami Editor. Namyami Heat-Seeking Missile. Jiang Batao heard the sound of the missile whistling through the air, but he wasn't able to have Empty Waves dodge while using Nebula Wave Slash. The heat-seeking missile's area of effect wasn't something that could be evaded by just twisting around. To dodge it, he would need to move away by a considerable distance. Dodge or continue with Nebula Wave Slash. He could only choose one. There was still time for him to dodge, but it would interrupt his Nebula Wave Slash. If he continued with Nebula Wave Slash, he wasn't certain he would succeed. If he didn't, everything would be lost. What should he do? The thought flashed through everyone's mind. On the stage, Jiang Badao's empty waves didn't budge. He continued to pour magic into his divine chains. He didn't hesitate. He chose Nebula Wave Slash. Will he succeed? The missile fell. Empty Waves swung his sword, completing the last of Nebula Wave Slash. Boom! A mushroom cloud sprouted. The powerful shockwave pushed away the impacted trash. Empty Waves was in the center of the explosion, which launched him into the air. Nebula Wave Slash. Had it been interrupted? No, it hadn't. The instant the mushroom cloud set off, the trash hit by Nebula Wave Slash suddenly let out a glimmer of light. The magic wave spread out, lifting the pile of trash, breaking it apart like a shattered magic cube. Cloud Piercer and Lord Grim suddenly appeared in everyone's view. Cloud Piercer was exempt from Nebula Wave Slash's damage, but not the shockwave from Heat-Seeking Missile. Lord Grim wasn't affected by Heat-Seeking Missile, but the Nebula Wave Slash sent him flying into the air. 3 characters had been affected by the attacks. The only one unaffected was Su Mucheng's Dancing Rain, who continued to provide artillery support. The previous assistance from Lord Grim became the greatest starting point for her. Explosions revolved around Cloud Piercer. Su Mucheng was still focusing Cloud Piercer. However, Joe Zekai was no longer trapped and wouldn't let the long-ranged gunfire hit him so easily. With a smooth, quick recover, Cloud Piercer rolled and got up from the scattered pile of trash. His arms were crossed against his chest, his 2 guns shooting towards both Lord Grim and Dancing Rain. His technique was beautiful to see, but because he was attacking 2 separate targets, his firepower towards each of them was cut by half. To pro players, it wouldn't be any threat to them. Both Yi Ziu and Su Mucheng would have no problems dealing with it, but through these attacks, Zhou Zekai was able to find his footing again. Jiang Batao seized the opportunity to stabilize empty waves. His attacks wouldn't be able to threaten Dancing Rain at this distance. Lord Grim was his only possible attack target at the moment. Wave slash after wave slash was thrown at him. Both sides were attacking and defending back and forth. Their battle was as brilliant as ever. One side was Samsara's Zhujiang duo that had won 2 championship titles together. The other was the Yisu duo that had won Best Partners 4 years in a row, yet had never lifted the championship trophy together. The 2 greatest duos in the alliance didn't disappoint. Each high point was replaced by another, but no matter how brilliant their battle was, the 2 sides were evenly matched. There wouldn't be any breakthroughs coming from this side. This 2v2 wouldn't be decided so quickly. What was the match point? Pan Lin and Li Yibo analyzed this issue. The director changed the camera angle according to their discussion. The live crowd was undoubtedly having the time of their lives. Not only did they have the projection technology showing them the overall situation, the numerous screens in the stadium displayed all the little details. Because of this, they didn't have the same focus as the viewers watching in front of their TV or computer. While these viewers were watching the battle between Zhou Zekai, Jiang Batao, Yi Ziu, and Su Mucheng, they didn't have much information on any other players. Would Sun Xiang's one autumn leaf be able to catch and Wenyi's little cold hands? When would Samsara's other 2 players arrive to help their teammates in the trash room? Since most of the live audience were Samsara fans, they particularly concerned about these questions. Lu Boyuan, Fang Minghua. Although these 2 hadn't yet arrived at the trash room, they knew what was happening there. With multiple battles taking place separately, the players needed to constantly update each other on their situation. Using that information, they could make adjustments accordingly. It was necessary. As a result, whether it during the 3v1 or when Kaiao Yifan and Wenyi and Su Mucheng disrupted their plans, the 2 had a general understanding of the situation through the team chat. They had to go help, of course. The viewers were also waiting for the moment they arrived. But Tang Rou and his boundless sea became their biggest hindrance. Not long after sending off Su Mucheng's Dancing Rain, he found a place to ambush Lu Boyuan and Fang Minghua. Practically the moment Su Mucheng's Dancing Rain rushed into the trash room and started providing support, Lu Boyuan and Fang Minghua reached there. They just happened to see Jiang Batao's report concerning Su Mucheng. There was no mention of Tang Rou. This was the issue that the 2 immediately noticed from the report. Communication between the team members needed to be immediate and accurate. If Jiang Batao didn't see Tang Rui's boundless sea, then he wouldn't mention him. If he didn't mention him, then he hadn't seen him. But the 2 didn't see boundless sea either, so they immediately sent back the information. They were aware of the terrain in the trash room and of Tang Rui's dirtiness. Jiang Batao's message only said that they hadn't seen boundless sea, but it didn't mean that he definitely wasn't there. Happy's support had layers. It was very possible that Tang Rou didn't immediately appear after entering, instead waiting for an opportunity to make the decisive blow. Just when they sent the information on Tang Rou ambushed them. The 2 hastily updated their information on Tang Rou, correcting their previous report. This was extremely important. An incorrect report could lead to the players on that side making an error in judgment. Then, the 2v1 unfolded. No one felt like the situation was too serious. Tang Rou staying behind to ambush them was likely just to stall for a bit of time. Seeing how the ambush spot and trash room wasn't far apart, it didn't seem like it would cause any major complications. After all, Samsara could just have Lu Boyuan tangle with Tang Rou, while Fang Minghua's cleric continued forward. It would make the ambush completely meaningless. The theory was very simple, but the problem was that it didn't happen. Fang Rui's target was very obvious. Fang Minghua's cleric, Laughing Song. Boundless Sea let them run past him a bit, and then he quietly sneaked up behind them and used Cloud Grasping Fist. Fang Rui had underestimated their caution. They didn't forget to constantly look around. Fang Minghua turned his head and noticed Boundless Sea. He immediately had Laughing Song dodge. Lu Boyuan noticed the change and was even more resolute. He directly put himself in front of Laughing Song. They had considered the possibility that Fang Rui had entered the trash room but hadn't appeared yet, but they had also considered the possibility that he was on the outside waiting to ambush them. Because of Fang Rui's dirtiness, it was hard to guess. As for the latter possibility, they had their own plans ready. As soon as they saw Boundless Sea, Lu Boyuan had Chaotic Cloudy Mountain put himself in front. Fang Minghua didn't hesitate. Laughing Song continued to move to leave Lu Boyuan to deal with Fang Rui. "Where are you running?" The public chat had been quiet the entire time up until Fang Rui made his move. A message popped up. Fang Minghua obviously wasn't going to actually stop running just because Fang Rui told him to stop. Fang Rui's message did nothing to the people facing him right now. It was more to distract the players on the other end who didn't know what the situation was. As for whether or not it actually distracted them, Fang Rui didn't care. Cloud Grasping Fist grabbed Lu Boyuan's Chaotic Cloudy Mountain, locking him down. Fang Rui obviously wasn't going to grab the grappler over to himself. That would be suicide. Cloud Grasping Fist was cancelled. Boundless Sea rushed forward. He lowered his body, immediately giving a sense of dirty play. Lu Boyuan's Chaotic Cloudy Mountain moved forward to intercept him. The crouching figure in front of him was truly quite irksome. Fang Rui's dirty movements had proved to be effective. Everyone acknowledged that his movements were quite logical. By making himself smaller, he was making it harder for the opponent to hit him. This sort of method wasn't only used by Fang Rui. However, whenever Fang Rui did it apart from looking dirty, no one knew how else to describe it. As soon as anything touched his hands, it would stink of rotten meat. Lu Boyuan looked at the opponent in front of him and had no choice but to adjust Chaotic Cloudy Mountain's stance. Usually, he could just use his hands to grab the opponent's shoulders and start wrestling with him. But because Boundless Sea had lowered himself, he would have to make a slightly wider movement, making it different than against a normal opponent. Charge. Lu Boyuan chose to take the initiative to attack in an attempt to proactively take control of the battle. Chaotic Cloudy Mountain bent down, his two arms hanging in front of him like a big gorilla. This stance would make it easier for him to grab Boundless Sea. The distance between the two sides quickly pulled closer. Lu Boyuan watched Boundless Sea's hands carefully. If there was even the slightest movement, it's coming. Boundless Sea suddenly hid his hands. Lu Boyuan knew an attack was coming. Chi Bullet. An attack shot at Chaotic Cloudy Mountain's face. All Lu Boyuan could see was a bright light in front of him, blocking his view, an old trick. Chaotic Cloudy Mountain tilted his head slightly and he could see again. His two arms spread out, ready to wrap around Boundless Sea. But then he saw Boundless Sea twist around to dodge to the side. Lu Boyuan had expected it though and adjusted himself accordingly. How fast! Suddenly, Boundless Sea accelerated and whistled past Chaotic Cloudy Mountain's clutches. Cloud Wind Body. Chapter 1630 Grab That Healer. Chapter 1630 Grab That Healer. Translator. Namyami Editor. Namyami Cloud Wind Body was a skill that buffed the user's senses. It gave the user greater control over Qi and allowed the user to sense their targets with Qi. Boundless Sea's sudden acceleration wasn't a result of Cloud Wind Body, but rather a different skill, Qi Flowing Cloud. Qi Flowing Cloud increased the Qi Master's speed in every way: movement speed, attack speed, cast time, and so on. Fang Rui's Boundless Sea had two buffs stacked on top of each other: Cloud Wind Body and Qi Flowing Cloud. As a result, he sped up and had greater control over his increased speed. He just barely brushed past chaotic Cloudy Mountain's fingertips, narrowly escaping from the danger. However, with this dodge, chaotic Cloudy Mountain was instantly left behind him. Lu Boyuan knew that this spelled trouble. By the time chaotic Cloudy Mountain turned around, Boundless Sea was already 2 body lengths away from him. 2 body lengths. This distance was painful to Lu Boyuan. Of the 24 classes, not including the 2 healers and the solely long-ranged attackers like launchers, every other class posed a threat at this distance, including strikers and brawlers. All of them had skills that could cover this distance. The only exceptions were grappler. And now, Boundless Sea just had to be 2 body lengths away from him. With his currently buffed movements, Tang Rou had done this on purpose. He was putting himself on the edge of danger in order to be as efficient as possible. From start to finish, he had never regarded Lu Boyuan's chaotic Cloudy Mountain as his opponent, but rather as an obstacle. Everything he had done was to get past this obstacle in the most efficient way possible. His true target was Laughing Song. It was as if Tang Rou had simply sprinted in a straight line. Fang Minghua hadn't expected that Tang Rou would be able to get past his protector, Lu Boyuan, so easily as if he were a ghost. Just like this, Boundless Sea made his way behind him. It was too late for Fang Minghua to think of a way to block him. Boundless Sea raised his hand and grabbed towards him, fling. Laughing Song was thrown backwards. Lu Boyuan's chaotic Cloudy Mountain rushed back, but Boundless Sea rolled away, avoiding chaotic Cloudy Mountain's clutches. Boundless Sea got up and sprinted towards Laughing Song. Cloud grasping fist. Lu Boyuan knew that in terms of speed, he couldn't match the buffed Boundless Sea. Step by step, he fell behind. He might as well use the skill that he added to his weapon today in an attempt to pull Boundless Sea towards him. But Tang Rou was truly cunning. He had clearly been running towards Laughing Song, but midway through he suddenly rolled. As he rolled, there would be an instant where he would be able to see behind him. In that instant, Lu Boyuan noticed the flow of qi in the air. Qi blade. It was too late for regrets. Lu Boyuan should have activated reinforced iron bones before using cloud grasping fist. He hadn't thought about it meticulously enough and had been fooled by Tang Rou. The qi blade flew towards him. Cloud grasping fist would definitely be interrupted. Lu Boyuan could only cancel the skill and then dodge it. With no other options, he could only chase after Tang Rou. In just a few steps, Boundless Sea would reach Laughing Song, who had rolled and was getting up. Fang Minghua wasn't some nobody. Previously, he had been caught off guard because he didn't think Tang Rou would be able to get past Lu Boyuan so quickly. This time, he was prepared. When Laughing Song got up, a bright light shone from his cross, Angel's Protection. The light spread out in a circle. Angel's Might, a 360-degree halo of light that forced the target back, ignoring super armor. This paladin skill was the skill that Fang Minghua had chosen to put on his weapon. Once the skill animation came out, there was no chance of dodging or resisting it. Shields could counteract numerous skill effects, but the knockback from Angel's Might was an exception. Boundless Sea could do nothing against it. With how close of a distance they were at, everyone didn't even think Tang Rou could react to it. However, the moment the Angel's Might touched him, he quickly pushed forward with his palms. Cloud pushing palm. It was a low-level skill that dealt little damage, but it could pass through space to strike the target and had a knockback effect. The knockback effect was inversely proportional to the distance. The closer you were, the stronger the knockback. When Boundless Sea used Cloud pushing palm, Angel's Might swept over him, forcing him back. The Cloud pushing palm had worked. As the light spread out from Laughing Song's Angel's Might, his body slid back. The knockback from Angel's Might was far stronger than that of Cloud pushing palm. However, Laughing Song's Angel's Might was only level 1, so it didn't push him too far. The bigger problem was that behind Boundless Sea was chaotic Cloudy Mountain. If he was grabbed, even if it was just once, then there was no hope in him pinning down Laughing Song any longer. Even the average viewer knew it, let alone the players on stage. The moment Angel's Might came out, Lu Boyuan immediately prepared himself, staring intently at Boundless Sea. As Boundless Sea was pushed back, he sunk down. He was planning on putting out a dirty stance so he could dodge the moment he could move again. Chaotic Cloudy Mountain sprinted over, lowering his center of gravity as well. But to his surprise, Boundless Sea kept sinking down. His two hands were about to touch the ground. Was he planning on running on all fours? Just when this thought flashed by Lu Boyuan's head, Boundless Sea's two hands really did hit the ground. But Boundless Sea was already within his reach. The Angel's Might was still pushing him back. It was too late to dodge, no, fling. Lu Boyuan didn't use any high-level skills. He simply planned on using this low-level grab skill to throw Boundless Sea far away from Laughing Song, and the problem would be solved. Chaotic Cloudy Mountains grabbed towards him, but the distance between him and Boundless Sea was getting farther and farther. Boundless Sea was getting lower and lower. How could he be getting farther and farther? Tang Rou dodging downwards had been within Lu Boyuan's calculations. Right now, it wasn't just that Boundless Sea was dropping lower and lower. Chaotic Cloudy Mountain was rising higher and higher. Chaotic Cloudy Mountain was airborne. Boundless Sea pressed his hands on the ground, not so that he could crawl away on his four limbs, but to use the Chi Master skill, Landmine Quake. It was an offensive skill, but the way Tang Rou did it made everyone forget that it was one. They thought he was pretending to be some sort of stupid brute. Nevertheless, in the end, he was able to get off a sneak attack. The viewers didn't know what to say. Those who hadn't realized that it was a landmine quake were angrily cursing at Tang Rou's despicableness. Those who had somehow realized it were cursing at Lu Boyuan for being so stupid. In any case, Lu Boyuan had been fooled. Chaotic Cloudy Mountain shot into the air. This was the key part. Boundless Sea went into a roll, and using the knockback from Angel's Might, he rolled right under Chaotic Cloudy Mountain. By the time he got up, Angel's Might had ended. Boundless Sea pushed out with his palms, shooting a sky-piercing strike at the airborne Chaotic Cloudy Mountain. Lu Boyuan's Chaotic Cloudy Mountain had failed to grab Tang Rou's Boundless Sea. On the contrary, his Chaotic Cloudy Mountain was blasted away by Boundless Sea. Amazing! Tang Rou was performing brilliantly. However, this was Samsara's home stadium. His spectacular play only received a bit of applause. Most of the viewers were anxious. If Fang Minghua and Lu Boyuan were stalled here, it would have a huge impact on the fight going on in the trash room. Even the broadcast had given up on showing the intense fight between the championship duo and the best partners. The chase between Sun Xiang's One Autumn Life and Wenyi's One Autumn Leaf wasn't given much attention either because Little Cold Hands had found a helper, Kaio Yifen and his 1-inch ash. Happy was trying to connect the two ongoing battles in the trash room to make it a 4v3. Because of this, Tang Rou's 1v2 against Fang Minghua and Lu Boyuan became the turning point. This was another star tactic. Previously, Happy had relied on Yiziu's 1v3 to seize the upper hand. This time, it was through Tang Rou's 1v2. 1v2 and 1v3, it sounded like the 1v3 was more impressive, but the two situations were entirely different. Yiziu had done a 1v3, but he didn't need to control the battle. His only objective was to survive under the combined assault from Samsara's 3 players. A 1v3 was a large enough advantage that it was enough to attract all of his opponent's attention. On the other hand, for Tang Rou's 1v2, he needed to be the one with the initiative. He needed to completely shut down Fang Minghua's Laughing Song and prevent him from leaving. He was facing one fewer player, but his task wasn't any easier than Yiziu's 1v3. When people saw this battle, they weren't thinking about whether or not Tang Rou could keep Fang Minghua here, but rather for how long. The pro players were already placing bets from 10 seconds to a minute. People were constantly yelling out their bets, and money kept being passed around. 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, 25 seconds, 30 seconds, bet after bet was lost. At first, placing down the bets was just for a bit of fun, but after 30 seconds all the fun was lost. No one could pay attention to it anymore. They were completely absorbed by Tang Rou's playing. Lu Boyuan wasn't some nobody, and neither was Fang Minghua. Both of them were experienced and skilled players. They had been on the same team for many years as well, so they had built up quite the synergy. However, they weren't able to escape from Tang Rou's boundless sea. They weren't even able to get one of them to leave. The pro players were used to placing themselves in the shoes of the players on stage. They could only throw aside their amusement and watch in awe at Tang Rou's performance. Thank you for listening to the story on KevinAudio.com, Chapter 1631. Perseverance Creating an Opportunity, Chapter 1631. Perseverance Creating an Opportunity. Translator. Namyami Editor. Namyami. The broadcast, the pro players, and the more skilled viewers were focused on Tang Rou's battle with Lu Boyuan and Fang Minghua. Only the viewers who were mostly there to watch the flashy stuff continued to linger on the battle in the trash room. The battle taking place there was indeed incredible as well, and it could also decide the match. However, from an overall perspective, Tang Rou's suppression towards the two Samsara players was the true match point. The outcome of this match would likely depend on Tang Rou, and right now, he had vastly exceeded everyone's expectations. To think he would be able to hold them off in a 1v2 for so long. Samsara's two players were unexpectedly unable to get past him. Of course, if Lu Boyuan's chaotic Cloudy Mountain wanted to go, Tang Rou wouldn't mind at all. Tang Rou's goal was clear. He wanted to stall Fang Minghua's laughing song. If Lu Boyuan was going to give him trouble, then he would deal with him. If Lu Boyuan wanted to leave, then he would be more than happy to let him leave. Lu Boyuan had already abandoned Du Ming once. Whether it was from a strategic perspective or a mental one, he couldn't abandon Fang Minghua too. Samsara was already down one player in the team competition and down a total of 3 points overall. This bastard, Lu Boyuan, grit his teeth, trying to catch Boundless Sea. He just needed to grab him once and the deadlock would be over. Fang Minghua also understood this reasoning and did his best to help Lu Boyuan. But Tang Rou was just too crafty. He was bringing out his dirtiness to his limits. Boundless Sea weaved in and out, and there were plenty of times where he had brushed past chaotic Cloudy Mountain's fingers. The difference was just by a hair. This wasn't a matter of luck. Tang Rou was playing at his peak. It wasn't like he couldn't dodge more safely, but he was intentionally making the margin of error as small as possible. He had done this ever since chaotic Cloudy Mountain's first attempt to block him. From beginning to end, he had gotten past Lu Boyuan as efficiently as he could so that he could have more time to deal with Fang Minghua's laughing song. If not, there was no way he would have been able to hold down Samsara's two players for so long. This was why the pro players were so astonished. For such precise movements once or twice, nothing too special. But for him to do it again and again for so long, how focused did he have to be? How tiring must it be? Yes, very tiring. Tang Rou soon could feel the fatigue hitting him, and he had only held them down for not even a minute. He had been mentally prepared, though. He knew how difficult it would be. In Yiziu's 1v3, Yiziu had used his overwhelming disadvantage to keep his opponent's attention on him. However, for his 1v2, he needed to take the initiative and proactively seize control of the battle. And he did it. So far, only the word perfect could describe what he had accomplished. He was exhausted, yet he was still constantly racking his brains to win control over his opponents. He had played to his limits in the group arena as well. After only a short rest, he had to play again in the team competition. Persevere, persevere to the end. Tang Rou knew how important his task was. If it was said that their foundation had been established through Yiziu's 1v3, then their final path to victory would be brought out by him. He had never thought of himself as this team's core. All he wanted was to perform well enough to match his pay and position. He knew that this was a moment that could likely decide the match. All he needed to do was to persevere. He didn't set himself a goal counting down. Tang Rou only had one thought: persevere, persevere until the end. He would hold down these two players until the moment they won. Before that moment came, he would never relax. 1 minute, 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes. Tang Rou persevered, playing absolutely perfectly. Not even the slightest opening could be seen in his plays. More and more people started shifting their attention to his side. More and more people were noticing the inconceivable. The pro players had forgotten about their bets long ago. 1 minute. That had been the upper limit of their bets. There had only been a single person who called out this time: Team Wind Howl's Ryu and Yangbin. The second highest bet was 45 seconds. When Ryu and Yangbin shouted out 1 minute, no one had taken him seriously. Everyone knew that Ryu and Yangbin and Tang Rou were former teammates, and the two had a good relationship with each other. He had yelled out 1 minute as a way to cheer his friend on. But now, a minute. Wrong. Everyone had been wrong, very wrong. Even Tang Rou's friend, Ryu and Yangbin, had underestimated Tang Rou's capabilities. 2.5 minutes. This was the current record, and it was still going. His perfect playing made it so that Fang Minghua's laughing song couldn't escape, which in turn made it so that Lu Boyuan's chaotic Cloudy Mountain couldn't leave. The battle in the trash room had lasted for 2.5 minutes too. It was no longer two separate battles. The two sides had grouped together, turning it into a 3v4. Samsara was at a numbers disadvantage, but these three top 10 players were nothing to scoff at. From the looks of it, they were actually the ones on the offensive. The three were using little cold hands as their breakthrough point, constantly sending out attacks towards him. On Happy's side, Yiziu's Lord Grim had become Little Cold Hands' flower protector. He practically never moved more than an inch away from him. Su Mucheng and Kaio Yifan were on the side, providing them support. Tang Rou was playing out of his mind in the 1v2 to win Happy this 4v3, yet Happy wasn't able to turn this into an intense back and forth. In fact, they were the ones on the defensive. It was hard not to feel that it was a bit of a pity. However, the experts knew that although Happy was on the defensive, they weren't feeling burdened. Their defensive position was because they saw what the opponents wanted and were going along with them. Focusing the healer was a very standard strategy, but no team's healer had ever been so disgustingly focused like Happy's during the season. With so much experience facing this strategy, Happy was very proficient in these situations. What's more, they had put in great effort into practicing and studying how to take advantage of this weakness since their very beginnings. For other teams, when the enemy focused their healer, their conditioned reflex was to protect their healer. But for Happy, when the enemy focused their healer, their conditioned reflex was to look for opportunities to kill their opponents. This sort of intuition had become Happy's style. Even if they hadn't made any preparations before the match, if they ever came across this situation, Happy's players would instinctively look for ways to turn it around. Every team's protection over their healer was purely defensive. Only Happy was different. Their protection over their healer was extremely aggressive. Their healer had originally been their weakness, but as the season went and their weakness improved, Happy had also set up all sorts of barbs. You could target their weak point, then you wouldn't come out unscathed. More often than not, it would end up being your guillotine. It wasn't that Samsara didn't know this point. As their opponent in the finals, they had researched Happy thoroughly. However, their current situation was out of helplessness. They were attacking, Happy was defending. However, the health they were losing wasn't low. On the other hand, Happy had a healer healing them. After 2.5 minutes, the damage was building up. The three of them hadn't sent out this message just once. They were also very surprised to see that their support still hadn't arrived yet. The thought of Tang Rou stalling their two players for this long hadn't even crossed their minds. If they had known, they definitely wouldn't have fought in this way. They would have created an opportunity to get out of the trash room and reconvene with their other two players. But they didn't know, so they kept waiting. Half a minute and a half, 2.5 minutes. The inconceivable had happened. Tang Rou had held down Lu Boyuan and Fang Minghua for 2.5 minutes. At this point, the three of them had lost the possibility of turning this around. During these 2.5 minutes, it wouldn't have been impossible to have Lu Boyuan abandon Fang Minghua and go in to help the rest of his teammates. Or the three could have escaped from the trash room and made contact again with Fang Minghua and Lu Boyuan. However, turning points happened in an instant. After 2.5 minutes, the three of them couldn't keep up the same aggressive offense as before. They had no choice but to be more cautious about their character's health. Who let them attack so unrestrained before? The reason that they had been so unrestrained was because they kept thinking that their support would arrive at any second. How could they have known that not a single sign of them would come even at this point? Rush out of the trash room now. The three looked at the health on their characters. If they gave in even a little, Happy's four would definitely counterattack with everything they had. During those 2.5 minutes, they could have forcefully made their way out. However, if they forced their way out now, they would definitely lose one or two people. Having already lost a player, Samsara was down by 3 points. Until the last moment, Samsara didn't want to take the risk of losing another. No matter how they looked at it, hoping for the 2v1 over there to have a breakthrough was more reliable than the three of them forcing their way out. The 3-minute mark was approaching. In the end, Samsara chose to wait. The spectating pro players didn't feel like Samsara was doing anything wrong. Right now, everything was because of Tang Rou, because of his miracle. At the beginning, everyone just thought that Tang Rou's stalling would just help Happy win some time and widen the lead a bit more. But now, Tang Rou's stalling had become the deciding point of this match. How much longer could Tang Rou hold on for? If Lu Boyuan and Fang Minghua successfully broke through right now and successfully got to their teammates, Happy would have a lead but not a win. The trade-off would truly be somewhat disappointing. Time continued to pass. Everyone's attention continued to be focused on Boundless Sea's battle with Samsara's two players. Angel's Might. Suddenly, Laughing Song's cross let out a brilliant light. Tang Rou had held down the two of them long enough for Laughing Song's Angel's Might to come off cooldown. Chapter 1632, Unbreakable Wall. Chapter 1632, Unbreakable Wall. Translator. Namyami Editor. Namyami 2 minutes and 45 seconds, the cooldown on Angel's Might. Tang Rou had held off Fang Minghua and Lu Boyuan for nearly 3 minutes, until this skill came off cooldown. Fang Minghua immediately had Laughing Song use Angel's Might. Angle, position, and timing. Fang Minghua wanted to use this opportunity to finally break this stalemate. The halo of light burst forth. Tang Rou's Boundless Sea couldn't dodge it or resist it. He could only be forced back. And this time, his previous cloud-pushing palm wouldn't work. It wasn't that he couldn't use it, but that the distance was too far. Because of their positioning, if he pushed Laughing Song with cloud-pushing palm, he would just be helping him leave faster. After Laughing Song cast Angel's Might, he immediately turned and ran. Lu Boyuan didn't have chaotic Cloudy Mountain follow after him to protect him. Instead, he sprinted straight towards Boundless Sea. Even though it looked like this Angel's Might had given Fang Minghua enough space to escape, Lu Boyuan felt uneasy. He wanted to use this opportunity to completely shut down Boundless Sea and prevent any future regrets. Charge! Chaotic Cloudy Mountain sprinted towards Boundless Sea, who was starting to lower himself. Boundless Sea's two hands moved towards the ground. This trick again. No one would fall for Tang Rou's act this time, but maybe he was doing it precisely for this reason. With Tang Rou's dirtiness, what couldn't he do? Thinking about it was too complicated, so Lu Boyuan didn't bother thinking too deeply on whether Tang Rou would repeat the same trick. He regarded it as a possibility, and when he attacked, all he would have to do was be on guard against it. No. Chaotic Cloudy Mountain sprinted over diagonally. Lu Boyuan had calculated how far Boundless Sea would be pushed. By rushing over right now, he would reach Boundless Sea's final destination. Lu Boyuan had set his sights on that location, and Boundless Sea was moving towards it just as he was expecting. Chaotic Cloudy Mountain didn't stop to take a rest. He jumped. Aerial twist. Chaotic Cloudy Mountain dropped from the air, his two legs grabbing towards Boundless Sea's neck. By doing it this way, Boundless Sea's landmine quake wouldn't able to affect him. Fall. Chaotic Cloudy Mountain's two legs moved towards Boundless Sea. This 1v2 would finally end here. Even though Tang Rou wasn't able to last long enough to clinch Happy's victory, no one overlooked Tang Rou's efforts and impact on the match during these 3 minutes. His freakish plays had vastly exceeded everyone's expectations. He had played spectacularly. He wasn't able to win Happy the game, but he had helped Happy win an enormous lead. If many people, including some Sara fans, were thinking about ifs. If Happy's 4 players hadn't been Yiziu, Su Mucheng, Kaio Yifan, and Enwenyi, and instead been what Li Xuan had envisioned. Yiziu, Su Mucheng, Li Xuan, and Zhang Xinji, players on an equal level as Samsara's 3 players, the time won by Tang Rou might have been able to lock in Happy's win. What a pity. While praising Tang Rou's performance, everyone couldn't help but feel a bit regretful about the outcome. But just when everyone was thinking this, Boundless Sea's head suddenly dropped and then missed. Chaotic Cloudy Mountain's aerial twist missed. Quite a few crowd members, including people watching at home, couldn't help but stand up in shock. They needed to confirm that it wasn't that the attack missed, but Boundless Sea had dodged it. Yes, he dodged it. Boundless Sea rolled to get away from Chaotic Cloudy Mountain. Afterwards, he went straight for Laughing Song. Chi Flowing Cloud. Boundless Sea activated this buff again. Angels might have come off cooldown. The same went for Chi Flowing Cloud. Boundless Sea moved as if he were riding the wind, quickly closing the distance between himself and Laughing Song. Behind him, Chaotic Cloudy Mountain's 2 legs formed a weird arc as he landed on the ground. He didn't have time to make another move, and unexpectedly fell to the ground just like that. Lu Boyuan's mind was a mess. He hadn't felt like his aerial twist would hit for certain. After all, there hadn't been any setup. He was just using the knockback from Angel's Might. He wouldn't be too surprised if Boundless Sea dodged it, and he had thought of countermeasures in case he did dodge it. But he was very surprised right now. Not surprised at how Boundless Sea dodged it, but when. Not just Lu Boyuan, but everyone had thought that the aerial twist would hit, yet Boundless Sea was able to complete a dodge. Tang Rou's movements had been so precise and tight that even a needle wouldn't be able to get through. Lu Boyuan had panicked at that moment, and instinctively did what he had planned on doing if Tang Rou dodged the aerial twist. He canceled aerial twist and turned it into a circle sweep kick. His 2 legs went into a weird arc because he had used this skill, but Chaotic Cloudy Mountain was too close to the ground. Because Boundless Sea had lowered himself, Chaotic Cloudy Mountain's target had been low to the ground. And with how precise Tang Rou's timing was when the aerial twist missed, there was no time for him to make another move. Even though Lu Boyuan was able to use the skill, Chaotic Cloudy Mountain was only able to do half of a circle sweep kick before hitting the ground. As a result, he looked like he was kneeling now. This guy, let alone the normal viewers, even the pro players were all stunned. Tang Rou's condition and playing couldn't be described with just great, spectacular, on fire, those usual descriptions. Tang Rou himself might not even fully realize what exactly he had achieved during these few minutes, but everything that happened on stage would leave its mark on stage, in everyone's mind, and turn into Happy's win. Boundless Sea had once again caught up to Laughing Song. With a downwards chi flow, he knocked Laughing Song down, and then with a fling, he threw Laughing Song behind him. 3 minutes. Samsara's 2 players had once again been stopped by Tang Rou. Just how long could he last? No, this was no longer the right question. It should be, how long were Samsara's 2 going to take to break through Boundless Sea's airtight wall? As for Yi Ziu and the others, they should be taking advantage of this opportunity, no. Even if they couldn't see what Tang Rou was doing, it had been 3 minutes, yet Samsara's support still hadn't arrived. The others on Happy should have realized by now what sort of situation Tang Rou had set up for them. The opportunity had been created by Tang Rou, but they had to be the ones to grasp it. Chapter 1633, Godly Play and a Clumsy Method. Chapter 1633, Godly Play and a Clumsy Method. Translator, Namiyami. Editor, Namiyami. Attack. Tang Rou had fought hard for this opportunity, yet why weren't the others on Happy attacking? Anyone that wasn't a Samsara fan was practically screaming in their heart. They didn't want to see Tang Rou's godly performance be buried because his teammates weren't doing anything. The camera turned around. The crowd turned around. Tang Rou had brought about an opportunity. The following question was whether this opportunity would be grasped. Happy playing safer previously could be explained by not expecting such a godly performance from Tang Rou. However, now that the battle had gone on for so long, and Tang Rou was still stopping Samsara's support from arriving, if Happy didn't make a more aggressive move, it would be rather puzzling. Attack! Countless people clenched their fists, waiting for this moment to happen. The Happy fans in the stadium had already stood up, but none of them made any noise. They stared intently at the stage, their attention on the ongoing battle in the trash room. Yi Ziu, Su Mucheng, Kai-O Yifan, and Wenyi. Lord Grim, Dancing Rain, 1-inch Ash, Little Cold Hands. It's time. Go, use everything you have and win. Explosions rumbled. The battle taking place here had never stopped, but at this moment everyone seemed to hear a change in the tempo from these explosions. Dancing Rain's artillery fire had begun pushing forward, and Yi Ziu's Lord Grim had finally moved away from Little Cold Hands. Armor-piercing missile. Colliding stab. Under Dancing Rain's cover, Lord Grim rushed out, colliding with one Autumn Leaf, who had been focused on attacking Little Cold Hands. Facing the character that had once been his, Yi Ziu didn't hold back. The sharp sword in Lord Grim's hand stabbed towards one Autumn Leaf's chest in an attempt to push him back. Little Cold Hands had started casting a spell. Holy light began to spread outwards, enveloping his surroundings. This was the cleric's Aya heal, God's protection. The skill began as soon as the chant began and ended when the chant ended. During the skill's duration, all allies within its range, including the healer, would receive powerful heals. The amount of mana needed to keep up the chant was massive, significant enough to reduce how much longer the cleric would be able to heal in the future. The healing efficiency of God's protection was actually quite low, and the range was very limited. As a result, the skill was rarely seen in pro play. Pro players preferred using their own methods to achieve the same effect but at a much smaller cost. But for Wenyi, this was his weak spot. Even though he was improving, it had only been about a year. It wasn't possible for him to become a healing god in such a short amount of time. And Wenyi was clear about where his weaknesses lay, so he chose to use God's protection, a skill that normal players thought of as a godly skill, but pro players considered as beneath them. Suddenly, Lord Grim, Little Cold Hands, and 1-inch Ash were bathed in holy light. Mucheng's dancing rain had a range advantage, so she was rarely threatened by Samsara. Although she wasn't inside the healing range, she also didn't need to be healed. God's protection only covered 3 characters, making it even more wasteful, but anyone could see that this skill was the signal for their fierce counterattack. Bang, 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 bang. Gunshots rang. No matter how subpar Nwenyi may be as a healer, for Samsara's trio, he was their biggest threat. Cloud Piercer's dual guns fired countless bullets towards little cold hands. During God's protection, the healer wouldn't be able to move. Once the chant was interrupted, the skill would cease. Lord Grimm, who had been guarding little cold hands previously, had finally moved away. Samsara had gotten this far by sticking to their strategy. Sun Xiang's one autumn leaf dragged Lord Grimm away, while Zhou Zekai's Cloud Piercer immediately attacked little cold hands. Their focus wasn't misplaced. Lord Grimm had moved away, but a new guardian had taken his place. 1-inch Ash activated Shadow Image, summoning a ghost that shielded little cold hands. And Wenyi's little cold hands had previously helped him block bullets, and this time, Caio Yifen was returning the favor. Their talent might not be extraordinary, and they might not have any crazy technical skill, but they could still use this clumsy method to contend with their opponent. Even if their opponent was Zhou Zekai, Glory's #1, an existence far above them. But at this moment, they knew that Zhou Zekai must be feeling more anxious than them. Their clumsy method was extremely effective at restraining their opponent's attacks. Gunshots rang again, but Happy's offense couldn't be stopped. Happy had begun their counterattack. Yiziu and Su Mucheng, the golden partners, led the way, while Caio Yifen and Nwenyi, the 2 rookies, supported them from behind using their clumsy methods. Everyone suddenly felt like it might not necessarily be the case that Happy would be better off with players better than their rookies. Caio Yifen and Nwenyi weren't gods, nor were they top players. However, they had their own way of playing, their own way of competing. A godly healer could rely on their own skill and reactions to prove large-scale healing. But Nwenyi was using a skill that people looked down on, God's protection, to the same effect. A godly Ghostblade player could create an inescapable net through their ghost boundaries, making every step taken by their opponents difficult. But Caio Yifen, even if it was just using his ghosts to block bullets, he made himself known at the most crucial moment, thwarting his opponent's plans just the same. They weren't the best, but they had their own remarkable aspects. What they did might not be the most optimal, but their impact on the battle was just as considerable. Victory was approaching them step by step. This was Samsara's home stadium, a demonic stadium where Samsara had never lost. But at this moment, Happy, a team that had started only last season in the Challenger League, was once again setting a new record, creating a miracle, creating history. In the second game of the finals, Happy won against Samsara, ending Samsara's perfect win record this season in their home stadium. There were countless highlights in this match alone, but the one that left the deepest impression on everyone was Tang Rou and his godly play that decided the match. Golden right hand. Today, what everyone witnessed was a pair of god hands. Chapter 1634, Joyful in Victory, Calm in Defeat. Chapter 1634, Joyful in Victory, Calm in Defeat. Translator, Namyami. Editor, Namyami. Happy wins. Second match of the finals, Samsara's home game. Happy obtained victory. They did it. In the televised broadcast, Pan Lin excitedly announced the final result of the match. Happy's performance was infectious. Many neutral parties in the audience ended up hoping for a Happy victory. Pan Lin was one such person. He was a commentator, so he should have been the most impartial, and no matter what hope he might have in his heart, he shouldn't display it so passionately. But in this moment, he couldn't hold himself back anymore. As a professional commentator, even if he sometimes couldn't analyze a match well enough, Even if he was sometimes laughed at and face-slapped, Pan Lin still truly loved this work, and glory as a game. A commentator couldn't be biased, but he wasn't a robot. There were times where he couldn't restrain himself. Such as now, like too many other people, he was infected by Tang Rou's godlike performance, and he didn't want to see Happy miss this opportunity. And now, Happy fulfilled all hopes. The audience and Pan Lin found their hopes fulfilled. In this moment, he couldn't think about too much. He was completely wrapped up in satisfaction, just like those in the audience. Samsara's players also all performed well, but Happy's players performed better, especially Tang Rou. After expressing his emotions, Pan Lin probably quickly realized that his self-control had slipped, and he quickly recovered the correct tone. Yes, Tang Rou is unquestionably the MVP of today's match. Li Yibo was quite loyal to his partner, immediately adding on to the sentence to help Pan Lin recover. He was much calmer than Pan Lin. After all, he was a pro player who had experienced the struggle for the championship, so he was quite worldly. Yes. Aside from that, Yiziu's performance was very eye-catching, said Pan Lin. Of course, Li Yibo agreed. Defeating Zhou Zekai in the group arena, 1v3 in the team round, hand speed flying toward 500 APM. If Tang Rou's godlike performance hadn't upstaged him, awarding today's MVP to Yiziu would also be entirely rational. By now, the players had all walked out of the competitor booths on stage. But after Happy's players gathered together, they swept in a circle, but didn't find their hero of the match, Tang Rou. This guy, is he trying to be all dramatic? Mucheng laughed. Yiziu also laughed. He looked at Tang Rou's competitor booth, and then at the replay on the large screen in the stadium. Even though this was Samsara's home stadium, they wouldn't purposely ignore the outstanding performances of the opposing players. If they lost, they still needed to lose with dignity. Right now, the screen was showing from multiple angles simultaneously the most thrilling moment of the match, Tang Rou's performance. And this was what Yiziu and the others standing at Tang Rou's side hadn't seen. Accurate judgment to the extreme flawless technique, a dirty method of expression. Using these, Tang Rou pinned down Lu Boyuan and Fang Minghua from start to finish. Yes, from start to finish. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. 4 minutes. None of these were the limit, and at the very end everyone had basically forgotten this statistic because it had already lost meaning. From start to finish, Lu Boyuan and Fang Minghua had been unable to escape. Did they still need this statistic? It was a shocking performance, but as Yiziu watched and watched, his original smile grew a bit heavy. He glanced at Tang Rou's booth again, and seeing that there was still no movement, he quickly walked over. The rest of Happy all realized this as well, and they quickly followed. When the stadium saw this sudden movement of the Happy players, they also seemed to realize something, and they began whispered discussion. They pulled open the door of Tang Rou's competitor booth. Yiziu looked inside and saw Tang Rou sitting there in the competitor chair in a very comfortable position, almost lying down. When he heard the door open, this guy turned his head, and seeing that it was Yiziu, he grinned and said, "Incredible, right?" "Incredible," Yiziu nodded. "We won. We won." Ha 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 ha. Tang Rou laughed loudly, but as he laughed and laughed, it was clear that he was out of breath. "It wasn't for nothing," he said fiercely, and then stood up from his chair. Reluctant to leave, he savored the sight of the screen displaying their victory, and then walked toward Yiziu. "You all came to see the miracle," Tang Rou laughed, seeing all of Happy gathered behind Yiziu. Seeing that Tang Rou was still in perfect condition, everyone let out a sigh of relief. When the audience saw Tang Rou appear, the Happy fans sitting in the away team area simultaneously burst into cheers and applause. And then, the whole stadium also burst into applause. Even though these were the opponents that defeated them, everyone respected Tang Rou's performance. Any gamer who understood or liked glory had no reason not to. The stadium sent their applause to the away team. To Tang Rou, this was extremely rare. Because of his style, when he did anything remarkable, it was often also infuriating, and during away matches this meant that the opposing team's fans were furious and couldn't give him any respect or appreciation. But this time it was different. Even if there was still sneakiness and dirty play mixed in, he did what everyone thought was impossible. "Are you all right?" Mucheng asked him from the side. "Why wouldn't I be?" Tang Rou replied and then waved his arm, acknowledging the applauding crowd. Mucheng watched his back and then looked at Yiziu. Even though Yiziu was still smiling, that heaviness from earlier still hadn't faded. When he saw Mucheng looking at him, he returned the gaze, answered Mucheng's doubts. The two teams walked toward the center of the stage and began to shake hands. Compared to the pre-match ceremony, this was much more casual. They weren't forced to line up. Tang Rou was the first to walk over, and so he was the first to greet the Samsara players. "Do you admit defeat?" Tang Rou asked, shaking Zhou Zekai's hand. He and Zhou Zekai were from the same season, and because the all-star experts from this season all had their own fresh and unique characteristics, they were called the strangest season of players. The Season 5 rookies ultimately produced 3 all-star level players. One developed dirty playing to the peak, dirty until it couldn't be any dirtier, Tang Rou. One was frustratingly silent off stage, and yet demonstrated explosive and elegant technique on stage, Zhou Zekai. And the third, Team Void's Wu Yus, was a fierce and direct ghost blade. Strangeness was the most distinctive trait of their season's players. As same-season rookies, they knew each other quite well, and many were good friends. Some made childish and naive arrangements with each other during their rookie days. Tang Rou and Zhou Zekai hadn't done anything like that. After all, Zhou Zekai's personality was right there. But the two of them were indeed familiar with each other. Zhou Zekai's tendency was to go with the flow, his words as rare as gold. When Samsara heard Tang Rou's chatter about admitting defeat, they really were afraid that Zhou Zekai would just say yes. That would just hurt their morale too much. But Zhou Zekai only smiled a little and said one word to Tang Rou: "Incredible." "Ha ha ha, as long as you know to be scared." Tang Rou was smug. Seeing this, the Samsara players were annoyed. Zhou Zekai clearly hadn't said he'd admit defeat, he said incredible. He'd avoided the question. But Tang Rou was shamelessly twisting this casual remark. It was clearly an avoidant, polite statement of praise, but this guy actually just interpreted it as Zhou Zekai saying yes. Looking forward to seeing this kind of exciting performance next match. Because Zhou Zekai didn't like speaking, Samsara usually had Vice-Captain Jiang Badao speaking to the other party on behalf of everyone. The meaning behind his words now was clear. Samsara didn't fear another godlike performance from Tang Rou. Next match, they were confident that they would defeat Tang Rou. Looking forward to seeing this kind of exciting result next match. Tang Rou repeated the sentence structure. Trash talk was his strength as well. How could the master of dirty playing be weak at trash talk? Ha ha. Jiang Badao just laughed and didn't answer. He knew that with Tang Rou's personality, continuing to talk would only make him more smug. Pushing this guy aside, Jiang Badao went to talk with the rest of Happy. And then Tang Rou saw Lu Boyuan, Fang Minghua, and Du Ming gathered together and glaring at him. Ha ha ha, you guys really suffered this match. Tang Rou immediately went to greet them with great enthusiasm. The three of them wanted to ignore him, but they also didn't want to be impolite. These past 2 years, Samsara had won more often than not, and they were all sorts of daring and energetic. After victory, they wouldn't be high and arrogant when interacting with the losers, but after a loss, they wouldn't be petty and small-minded when interacting with the victors. Team Samsara's popularity had been rising these few years, not just because they were champions, but because this team did many things well. They always acted carefully and appropriately. Seeing that Tang Rou had clearly just come over to mock them, these three from Samsara didn't react much. They just gave him plain congratulations. Good luck next match. Tang Rou continued to speak in a mocking tone. The three of them had been mocked quite intensely and were now covering their injuries. As though they couldn't hear the mockery in Tang Rui's voice, they responded quite seriously with phrases like, "Let's all work hard," and whatnot. As a team that rarely met defeat, after losing such an important match, Samsara's players were still very calm. Although the stadium fans had felt depressed after this loss, they were gradually moved by this attitude that Samsara demonstrated. Slowly, applause rose up once again in the stadium, and this time it was no longer respect given toward the victors, but support given toward their own team. This kind of attitude, this kind of calm after defeat, this caused everyone's faith in Samsara to be renewed for the third match of the finals. Their team Samsara would not fall so easily. Chapter 1635 Class Change, Return to Godhood. Chapter 1635 Class Change, Return to Godhood. Translator, Namyami. Editor, Namyami. Amidst applause, the curtain closed on the match. In the post-match press conference, Samsara continued to display the attitude they'd had when exchanging greetings with Happy right after the match. They had lost, but they were calm. They didn't lose control of themselves and demonstrated the appropriate bearing of a championship team. Although they were regretful that their home game win streak had been broken, they expressed that this allowed them to set down some pressure. And then the victorious Happy came up. The reporters had an armful of questions they wished to ask, but surprisingly, Tang Rou, the player that had attracted the most attention during the match, didn't appear in the press conference at all. This was quite unreasonable. Players who did poorly were often protected after a match and not sent out to the press conference. This, the reporters could understand. But for players that did well, stepping into the spotlight again during the press conference was something that both the reporters and the team would want to see. And Tang Rou was no rookie. There was no need for this kind of protection. When they thought about Happy's unusual actions on stage after the match, the reporters suddenly realized something. After congratulating and praising Happy's victory, someone immediately asked, in a half-joking tone, why Tang Rou was hiding away. And then they heard an answer that they had already guessed in their hearts. Tang Rou had expended a lot of energy during the match and was feeling a bit worn out. However, the one who gave this answer was Yiziu, so the reporters had to think it over. Before, no one had any experience interacting with Yiziu, but after this season, the reporters for all of the major media outlets complained about him incessantly. They knew all too well that this person wasn't easy to deal with. His answer right now, was it true or false? Was it a smoke bomb for the last round of the finals? When they thought about this, the reporters decided they didn't need to worry about whether it was true or not. The plot to deceive the enemy had already been deployed. Whether or not Tang Rou would make it on stage in the finals, Samsara could go and guess. Since there were such sinister motives, they definitely wouldn't be able to get anything about Tang Rui's condition. After experimentally throwing out another few questions and receiving answers that were clearly ambiguous on purpose, the reporters were clear, and they didn't tangle with the issue any longer. From Happy, Tang Rui's performance was the most eye-catching, but the performances of the other players were all very attention-grabbing as well. There was still much to ask if Tang Rou hadn't accepted any post-match interviews, but he was still the protagonist of all the news articles released the next day. Esports Weekly had even used Tang Rou, Class Change, Return to Godhood, as their headline, acknowledging Tang Rui's godliness right at the top. Because he'd changed classes, because his performance had fluctuated, because of his unique dirty chi master style, Tang Rou hadn't been chosen as an all-star this season, even though he used the #1 chi master, Boundless Sea. From that day, there was endless discussion over whether or not this class change would be his end. When he performed well, people would come out to praise him. When he performed average or poorly, people would proclaim his decline. Esports Home was the authority in the circle, so there were of course articles about his class change. But with Esports Home's level of professionalism, they were very attentive to detail in their analysis. They didn't rely on simple surface-level discussion. But today, relying on his performance in this one match, Esports Home concisely acknowledged and approved Tang Rou's class change. Tang Rou, class change, returned to godhood. As she ate breakfast, Chen Guo held this week's report. Whenever their team or their players made the headlines, it would always put her in high spirits. She had even saved and organized all of the newspapers from this season that featured Happy in the headlines. But seeing this bold headline today, Chen Guo couldn't be as excited as she was before, because Tang Rou's condition right now really wasn't very good. That day, he'd energetically greeted the crowd and mocked Samsara right after coming out of the competitor booth, and he'd gleefully boasted to his teammates as well. But after returning to the prep room, Tang Rou had all but collapsed. It was as though all of his energy had suddenly run out, and everyone could see how exhausted he was. Tang Rou was exhausted, so he hadn't attended the press conference. Yiziu had spoken the truth, even though the reporters didn't believe him and thought it was a smokescreen. But this time, this smokescreen had affected even Happy themselves. No one could say for sure how well Tang Rou would recover for the final match in 2 days. Even though Tang Rou stubbornly insisted that he would be fine, everyone was already quietly preparing for the scenario where Tang Rou was unable to play. Losing Tang Rou would be a massive blow to their strength. No one could imagine that this kind of thing would happen at such a critical moment. Compared to the physical competition of normal athletics, it was fairly rare in glory competition for a player to be unable to appear because of illness or injury. Chen Guo stared at the paper's headline without flipping the pages to read the content. Holding a cup of milk, she sat in the dining room in a daze. The final match was in 2 days. Because Samsara had ranked higher than Happy in the regular season, the third match would be held in Samsara's home stadium. In order to demonstrate determination, Chen Guo had booked hotel rooms here for Team Happy all the way until the end of the third match. Now, as they hoped, the third match awaited them, but because of Tang Rou, another shadow weighed upon everyone's hearts. Last night, Chen Guo hadn't slept well, and now that she looked at this paper, the shadow floated back. So early. As she was spacing out, she suddenly heard someone talk. She lifted her head to see Yiziu holding breakfast as he sat down across from her. Chen Guo nodded. Yiziu's gaze landed upon the esports weekly report in front of her. Tang Rou, class change, returned to godhood. Yiziu read the title, and after clicking his tongue in marvel, he made no comment. How is he? Asked Chen Guo. Probably still sleeping, said Yiziu. I meant for the match in 2 days, will he be all right? Chen Guo said. We'll see when the time comes, Yiziu said, uncertainty. The final battle was imminent, but Happy had this uncertainty. But Chen Guo understood that this wasn't the time to be deeply worried. There needed to be determination. Then we should let everyone prepare, said Chen Guo. That's straightforward enough. Yiziu smiled. Fortunately, the maps for this last match are random, and the roster usually isn't decided until after the map is chosen. Everyone will be fully prepared. But no matter what the map is, have you thought about not letting Tang Rou go on stage? Chen Guo said. Yiziu fell silent. Chen Guo was often rendered speechless by Yiziu, and she had often hoped for the chance to do the same to him one day. But now, faced with a Yiziu that truly had nothing to say, she didn't feel happy at all. Chen Guo knew that she had hit the nail on the head. No matter which map was chosen, Happy couldn't go as far as to bench Tang Rou. Even though he wasn't the absolute core of Happy, he was still a part of the central axis. And with Tang Rou's style and resourcefulness, there really weren't any maps that would impede his performance. Silence. Chen Guo didn't ask any more questions. She quietly drank her milk and quietly watched Yiziu as he rapidly finished his breakfast. "Does it matter if he goes on or not?" Yiziu said after wiping his mouth with a napkin. "Either way, we'll win." Chen Guo laughed. This wasn't logical at all. But after hearing Yiziu say this, she suddenly felt very relaxed and very calm, because in her mind, Yiziu had never said anything that he couldn't do, not a single time. "So that's to say we're the champions," Chen Guo said. "If not, then why are we here?" Yiziu looked at Chen Guo, astonished, as though he were looking at an alien. "I'll go see if that Tang Rui's awake yet," Chen Guo said, standing up. "Give the newspaper to him, it'll lift his spirits," said Yiziu, gesturing toward the paper on the table. "What about you?" asked Chen Guo as she took the paper. "I'm not full yet." Yiziu held his plate, looking around. Chen Guo left first, returning upstairs to Tang Rui's room. It was the finals, so to make things convenient for everyone, they were all in separate rooms. But when she arrived at Tang Rui's room, the door was already open, and when she looked inside, there were many people. Everyone from Happy was here. What was this? As Chen Guo was about to enter, she already heard Tang Rui chattering away. "Did you guys think I was dying or something?" Chapter 1636, Review Chapter 1636, Review Translator, Namiyami Editor. "Namiyami, you seem pretty energetic," Chen Guo said, walking in. Hearing Tang Rui making all this noise, she suddenly felt much better. "All you guys crowding around me and no one brought me breakfast." Tang Rui said indignantly. "Brought you a newspaper." Chen Guo held up the paper in her hand so that Tang Rui could see the headline. The title was very eye-catching, so Tang Rui saw it immediately. His eyes lit up, but right after he pretended as though it were nothing. With an expression of "this brother has seen the big stage," he dismissively said, "Tusk, that's nothing." Tang Rui wasn't lying on the bed. After all, esports competitions were carried out while sitting in front of a computer. Even though they could still be exhausting, they weren't so exhausting that a player would be unable to get out of bed. Chen Guo casually tossed the newspaper toward the bed and then carefully studied Tang Rui. He didn't seem any different from normal. Before she'd come here, the others had already spoken with Tang Rui. It was a bit of a tight squeeze. So many people in this one room, so after a greeting, they began to disperse. "Do you need me to call breakfast for you?" Chen Guo asked Tang Rui. "No, it's fine. I'm gonna take a walk in a bit. I'll get something to eat then," said Tang Rui. "All right, then I won't bother you any longer." Chen Guo didn't ask Tang Rui anything like, "How are you? Can you make it?" She followed everyone else out of the room. Tang Rui stood by the window. The newspaper lay face up on the desk next to the table, and the rays of light streaming through the window shone down upon it, illuminating the words, dazzlingly bright. Tang Rui lowered his head and looked at it, but he didn't pick it up. He only laughed a little, then turned to look outside the window. Today's weather really was quite good. Happy didn't have any plans in the morning. After such an intense battle, they wanted to rest up as much as they could. They scheduled a strategic meeting for the afternoon. It wasn't any high-intensity practice. It was just a review of the match that they just played. This was something that pro teams would do after every match. And in the playoffs, where the matches were at a higher level and teams would play the same opponent multiple times, review became a highly effective method of adjustment. Summarize the successes and failures of the previous match. Take the chance to plan strategy and tactics for the next match. It was a very focused method. Compared to the regular season, these reviews held greater significance during the playoffs. And so, at 1:30 in the afternoon, Happy's members gathered in the conference room they booked at the hotel. Yiziu had of course organized the match recordings beforehand, and when everyone arrived, he didn't waste any time with unnecessary words and began playing the recording. "Let's watch the team competition first," Yiziu said, as the screen displayed this match's team competition. In this team competition, to put it briefly, I believe that Samsara lost largely to surprise. Too many unexpected situations happened, messing up their plans. This meant that their strategies did not completely come into play, said Yiziu. Take the beginning, for example, with Samsara's advance. Yiziu pointed out Samsara's initial formation, with Zhou Zekai, Jiang Badao and Sun Xiang advancing first, while Lu Boyuan stayed behind to protect Fang Minghua. Clearly, this formation was to take advantage of the map's high points. The changes afterward were really quite simple. As for the surprise that happened during this point, I don't think I need to go into detail, said Yiziu. The surprise here referred to Yiziu holding off Zhou Zekai, Jiang Batao and Sun Xiang all by himself. This was Yiziu's accomplishment, but during the review session, his tone was neither humble nor bragging. He simply told things as they were. In this part of the match, we can take another look at the cooperation between these three Samsara attackers. This is something that we have studied many times before, said Yiziu. Of course it had been many times. It wasn't just Happy. Any team in the alliance that was aiming for the championship would definitely treat this as a crucial topic of study. Regarding this content, they couldn't say that they had a thorough understanding, but they at least analyzed it to the best of their ability. Yiziu said that they were looking at the attack coordination between these three, but in reality, they focused more on how Yiziu countered the attacks that the trio set up. As Yiziu was the player in question, he of course knew everything the most clearly. But right now, he was sharing the thought process with everyone. Because everyone played different characters with different class skills, they would all use different methods to deal with the same situation. Only by understanding the fundamental thought process could they learn from this 1v3 situation and apply it to their own class and character. Yiziu would talk about what happened, someone would raise a question, someone would express an opinion, discussion, debate. Chen Guo quietly stood to the side. She always attended Happy strategy meetings. In the very beginning she would happily talk, ask some questions, express her point of view. But gradually, she began to just quietly stand to the side and listen, just like she was doing now. Compared to the beginning, Chen Guo's experience had increased dramatically, and if she gave her opinions now, she would probably be correct more often than not. But Chen Guo didn't talk anymore, because no one had ever left out a point she wanted to make. Look at Tang Rou. 2 years ago, she was a complete noob, but now, Chen Guo sometimes couldn't even keep up with her reasoning. She would be lying if she said she wasn't saddened at all. In her heart, Chen Guo still wished that she could be a pro player as well, that she could fight on stage alongside all of these partners. But unfortunately, that was reality. All she could do was make their lives off stage a little better. It was a bit disappointing, but it was nothing to hang her head about. Because Chen Guo understood very clearly that she was a member of this team as well. While they fought toward their goal, they had never left her behind, they were still tied together. The final match was in 2 days. Everyone, good luck. Chen Guo stood to the side and silently cheered everyone on. Right now she wasn't thinking at all about whether or not Tang Rou would be able to play. Because, just like Yiziu had said to her that morning, whether or not he could play, their goal wouldn't change. Victory, champions. The review continued. Chen Guo just stood to the side silently all the way until the end. Tonight, does everyone have their own plans, or do you want to get dinner together or something? Chen Guo asked. I feel like if we had a celebratory feast right now, that wouldn't be too good. If the media found out, what would they say about us? Wei Chen said. Chen Guo glared at this old man. Even though he was saying nonsense, he did express his meaning that he would prefer free time. Everyone, you're free to do whatever. If you want to obey our boss's plans, then just follow her, said Yiziu. Chen Guo gave him a glare as well. What kind of statement was that? Free, obey, weren't those antonyms? How come he just put them together? Mo Fan left first. He was always very uninterested in these sort of group gatherings. Luo Jai was discussing something with Kaio Yifan, and Wenyi joined them as well. The three of them, still in discussion, left together. Steamed Bun was prepared to join them too, but then he was caught by Wei Chen, who said something to him. Steamed Bun was instantly cheerful and went along with Wei Chen. "Boss, last match was very tiring for me. I'm heading back early to rest." Appearing to be very meek and obedient, Tang Rou came over to let Chen Guo know. Chen Guo couldn't say anything except go. In the end, it was just her, Tang Rou, Mucheng, and Yiziu, 3 girls and 1 guy. Yiziu was organizing data and clearly had no intention of obeying her plans. Chen Guo had long given up on the hope of a big get-together, and after saying goodbye to the others, she and Tang Rou left together. Just 2 of them were left. Mucheng stood behind Yiziu, watching him reclassify the recordings, articles, images, etc. from before and save them. "How do you feel?" Mucheng suddenly asked. "How do I feel? You mean about Tang Rou?" Yiziu said without turning his head. "No, I'm talking about you. How are you?" Mucheng asked. Yiziu, in the middle of busily organizing the files, visibly stopped. "I'm all right," he said. Chapter 1637, If Life Were Long. Chapter 1637, If Life Were Long. Translator, Namyami Editor. Namyami, all right in what way? Mucheng asked very seriously. She walked forward until she could see Yiziu's expression. "That's not the important point." Yiziu lifted his head. He didn't try to hide. He looked at Mucheng with a smile. They'd been together for many years, and their mutual understanding ran perhaps even deeper than they thought. Often, just one look was enough to understand the other's intention. Yiziu knew what Mucheng was worried about, and he didn't explain, nor did he try to cover it up. If he'd given that response to Chen Guo, she probably would have instantly filled with rage and yell at him about what was the important point. But Mucheng only nodded and said nothing more. That's not the important point. Now that they were here, only one thing was important: victory, champions. For the sake of this, he could pay anything. He could give up anything. And so Mucheng said nothing more. She would, while Yiziu was putting in all his effort, simply do all that she could to help him, to make that sole important point into reality. That was Yiziu's important point, and it was her important point as well. It was the important point that no pro player would ignore. Yiziu continued to organize the data. For every file, he had the habit of opening it to double-check what it was, then saving it in the correct location. But when he opened the next recording, he didn't immediately close and move it like he had with the others. The video continued to play, and Yiziu watched it blankly. Since it was a review of Samsara's match, most of these files were of course material on Samsara. This video was as well, and on-screen, this season's best partners Cloud Piercer and One Autumn Leaf were fighting side by side. Shocking talent, outstanding technique, these 2 characters charged forward and knocked all others out of their way, entering into an empty space. And this was an official match from the regular season. Just like that, the opponent fell into chaos from these 2 characters, and Samsara easily took the victory. Zhou Zekai, Sun Xiang. This duo had only become partners this season. Countless people had placed high hopes on them, believing that they would be the rulers of this next era of glory. In his heart, Yiziu didn't disagree, but right now that wasn't what he was thinking about. Mucheng watched him, and she too knew that he wasn't thinking about that. "It's a strange feeling, isn't it?" Yiziu said. Mucheng knew what he was referring to, but she shook her head. "I don't feel it. I actually never played glory seriously with my brother." "That's right," Yiziu nodded. At the time, he and Mucheng spent all day in front of the computer playing games, but Mucheng had sent Mucheng to school. He didn't want to raise his little sister into a pro gamer or pro player or anything like that. But this wasn't because he felt that it was difficult or embarrassing. It was the opposite, in fact. Mucheng sincerely loved what he did. He loved gaming, he loved glory, and he was proud of what he did. Regarding Mucheng, he simply took a neutral stance, neither supporting nor opposing. For something like this, she has to choose herself. That was what Su Mucheng said. At the time, he was still just a kid in his teens, but he talked like a life coach, carefully thinking about his little sister's future. She's grown up watching us play games and glory. I feel like she must have some interest, like when she named our characters. Yiziu eyed the mistake in the name One Autumn Leaf on screen. To be honest, it had always bothered him. Tusk, what do you know? Little kids often have a rebellious spirit. Maybe after seeing us play all day, she really hates it, Su Mucheng said. You can't say that like it's a given. Not every kid has a rebellious spirit, said Yiziu. Says the one who ran away from home. Su Mucheng was unimpressed. I raised a little brother, so I have experience, Yiziu said. Oh, how old is he? Su Mucheng quickly asked. Just a little younger than me, we're twins, said Yiziu. Fuck off, Su Mucheng replied with 2 words. One autumn leaf, autumn tree, where'd you two run off to? At this moment, a number of messages from the group leader suddenly flashed in the chat. Oh no, we're going the wrong way, Su Mucheng suddenly realized. Damn, could you not get too distracted while chatting, said Yiziu. Where is this? Su Mucheng quickly pulled up the map. We can't go back, that bridge back there breaks when the story's triggered, Yiziu said. We'll have to fight our way through here. Helpless, Su Mucheng adjusted his camera and looked forward. That's our only way. Yiziu felt similarly helpless. And so the two of them continued forward. After half an hour, the system issued an announcement. One autumn leaf has killed leader Sake, dungeon complete. What the hell? What are those 2 bastards doing? All sorts of scolding instantly flooded the group. They had only made it halfway through the dungeon when the final boss was already killed. My bad, I took the last hit, Yiziu said. So rude. As Su Mucheng spoke, he pulled out a notebook and quietly made a note. The year, month, day, hour, minute, dungeon, boss, final kill, one autumn leaf, 474th time, and himself. Su Mucheng flipped to a previous page. 318 times, what a gap. How many times was that? Yiziu leaned over. Only 400, just a little ahead of me. Su Mucheng closed his notebook with a snap. Hee, do you think you'll ever have the chance to surpass me in your lifetime? Yiziu laughed. Kid, don't be too reckless. The road of life is very long, Su Mucheng scoffed. The road of life is very long. If the road of life really were so long, Yiziu thought, watching the video in silence, then what would be the 2 names recorded here now? Shaking his head, Yiziu closed the video. Let's go, he called to Su Mucheng. Yeah, Su Mucheng nodded, let's go. Do you find glory fun? As they walked out the door, Yiziu suddenly asked this question. And what kind of important point is this? Su Mucheng laughed. Because we were actually never really sure, said Yiziu. It's very fun, I'm very sure, said Su Mucheng. Then that's good. Yiziu let out a breath. Why, winning the championship will be even more fun, Yiziu said. Of course, said Su Mucheng. So what? What do you want for dinner? I don't care. Let's just wander around and find somewhere. Okay. Chapter 1638. The championship is ours. Chapter 1638. The championship is ours. Translator. Namyami Editor. Namyami Culture Square, one of City S's famous shopping areas. The giant open-air screen hanging on the outside of the North Building was far more spectacular than any screen hanging inside a Glory Stadium. And right now, this screen that had become a symbol of the city was currently playing the highlights from last night's match between Samsara and Happy. 10 years ago, this would have been unimaginable. At that time, even though esports had already developed to a certain extent, it still didn't attract much attention, and it was still far from mainstream. But today, clips from the finals would be played in a public city square. It seemed like Samsara had become the pride of City S because of Samsara. So many people in this city were now concerned about the Glory Finals. Of the people passing through this square, perhaps some would stop in their tracks and watch for a while. Perhaps some would just spare a glance before continuing to walk. Some were paying close attention to these matches. Some didn't know much, But if someone were to say that they didn't even know what this was, then they would certainly earn some disdainful looks. Glory was no longer just the glory of the players, the teams, or the fans. It was now the glory of an entire city. And the weight of the hopes carried by the players and teams was greater than ever before. What a shame! If we won yesterday, we would have had 3 straight championships. Tang Rou heard the man standing ahead of her speaking regretfully. Yeah, too bad. The person standing next to him was sighing as well. Tang Rou had been standing here for a while. She knew that these two hadn't known each other beforehand, but because they had both paused to watch and happened to be standing next to each other, they began a discussion. Tang Rou could tell that these two weren't glory players. Their dialogue was full of that half-understanding, hearsay, exaggerated public opinions. But from start to finish, the word they used was, we. These two people weren't glory players at all, but they were still paying attention to this match. They still felt a strong connection to their city's team. They still held high hopes for the championship. This was the best evidence of glory's ever-expanding presence and influence. Tang Rou smiled. Even though these people supported the opposing side, she deeply appreciated this attitude. She herself had started as an indifferent passerby, gradually investing more in all of this. Even in the beginning, she hadn't even felt that glory was all that interesting. All she wanted to do was become a bit stronger, and then defeat that guy who'd forced her to lose over a dozen games in a row. But now, it had been a while since she'd cared about that. Now, she aimed for a larger goal than defeating Yiziu. Like all of the other pro players, she yearned for victory. She hoped to win the championship. Was this because she always strove to outdo others? Maybe a little. But if she only cared about that, then perhaps her vision would have remained fixed on Yiziu. But now, when she looked at Yiziu, she thought about how to better cooperate with him, and then achieve victory together. This was no longer simply a desire to outdo others. There was another feeling quietly growing in her heart. She no longer fought just for her individual interest. She now had things she was carrying upon her back. Her teammates, the fans, and those like the two people in front of her now who didn't understand the game but still drew pride from it. It was a bit unfortunate that she hadn't gone on stage yesterday, but the team had won, and that was more important than anything. Right now, this was Tang Rou's truest feeling. The championship is ours, Tang Rou suddenly shouted. Without waiting for everyone's eyes to land upon her, she spun around and left. Everyone paused. The match displayed on this massive screen was quite exciting, but for this city, it felt a bit oppressive. Because in yesterday's match, victory did not belong to them. Victory had gone to Team Happy. Right now, everyone was gathered here and watching this match, but their minds had already gone to the next match. They were looking forward to victory in the next round, and then they would have the championship. The championship is ours. This sentence truly expressed the sentiment in everyone's hearts. Even though it came out so suddenly, catching everyone off guard, soon they were set aflame by the passion in this simple statement. Yes, the championship is ours. Someone echoed the shout, and then more and more, more and more. In this square, whether or not they understood glory, as long as they knew this competition, they hoped for the championship, and they joined in this shouting. Only those senior players who were very familiar with the glory competition found the short-haired silhouette leaving the crowd. They were stunned. That girl, wasn't that Happy's Tang Rou? Someone said. You're saying this year's rookie king, Tang Rou. The Tang Rou who promised to retire after failing a 1v3 but backed out. That really pretty Tang Rou. More and more sets of eyes looked in that direction. Tang Rou walked farther and farther away, but everyone believed more and more this was indeed Tang Rou. So what she shouted just now, someone suddenly realized. So that ours was referring to Happy. They were instantly dumbfounded. And right now, the good citizens of City S in the square were currently shouting, the championship is ours, in a surge of public feeling. Thinking about how this ours was actually referring to Happy made them all sorts of uncomfortable. But how could they explain it now? And even if they could, so what? Were they not allowed to use the word ours? Tang Rou shouted ours, we'll shout ours, and the ours that we're shouting refers to samsara. Everyone understood this clearly. After getting this point clear, these loyal samsara fans had nothing more to worry about. They would simply accept this mistake and make the best of it, shouting along with everyone. The championship is ours. The shouts grew louder and louder, but Tang Rou didn't look back. She strolled along the road all the way back to the hotel. Heading upstairs, she saw Yiziu hanging around in the hallway, smoking. When he saw her, he waved. "Where'd you go?" he asked casually. "I just took a walk," said Tang Rou. "Oh, good luck tomorrow." No moving, sensational encouragement. Yiziu simply said this offhand sentence to Tang Rou. Tomorrow. Yet Tang Rou still found a fault in his words. "More good luck for the day after," said Yiziu calmly. "Ha ha," Tang Rou laughed without saying anything. But then she noticed that the room Yiziu was headed toward didn't seem to be his own room. "Where are you going?" she asked, curious. "Some kids wanted some data, I'm bringing it to them," said Yiziu. In Happy, aside from Wei Chen, Yiziu would casually call everyone kids. Tang Rou didn't know who he was referring to, but she saw him walk into Luo Jai's room. Now that her curiosity had been piqued, Tang Rou followed. In Luo Jai's room, he, Kaio Yifan, and Wenyi were all circled around one computer. "Here." Yiziu held out a USB. Luo Jai accepted it and inserted it into the computer. He soon found what he was looking for and pulled it up on-screen alongside his own document. He also had his notebook open, covered in writing, and he began theory-crafting with Wenyi and Kaio Yifan. Yiziu stood to the side, arms folded, smoking, listening very attentively. Tang Rou hid a smile. She suspected that, regarding what Luo Jai was explaining right now, even she understood more than Yiziu. This kid was once again using his numbers to analyze some probabilities, but he was speaking too in-depth. A formula here, a derivation there, and Wenyi and Kaio Yifan looked as confused as steamed bun. Finally, Yiziu could take it no longer. He finally moved and pointed to a spot on Luo Jai's screen. "Take a look here." Tang Rou was shocked. The part of the document that he pointed out was the calculation of the characteristic function through a Fourier transform of the probability density function. Yiziu was able to understand something that complex. Even she only knew what the words were, but nothing of the details. After pointing it out, Yiziu was already turning around to leave, and he was met with Tang Rou's shocked expression. "Another lesson for you," Yiziu said, walking by Tang Rou. "Not just your opponents, you can't underestimate your teammates either." He had already walked past, and Tang Rou could only continue to stare wide-eyed at his retreating back. But then from behind her, she heard Luo Jai ask, "What's wrong here?" "There's a bit of dirt there," said Yiziu, walking out of the room. Oh, Luo Jai hurriedly pulled out his glasses cloth and rubbed at that spot on his screen. Chapter 1639, The Final Battle. Chapter 1639, The Final Battle. Translator, Namyami. Editor. Namyami. The first rest day after the match passed just like that. Aside from the review in the afternoon, Happy's players didn't gather together. Instead, each did their own thing. Yiziu and Mucheng just ate and chatted, treating it like any other day. Tang Rou took a walk by herself to keep her mind off things. Fang Rui and Mo Fan closed themselves in their rooms and didn't show their faces again. And Kaio Yifan, and Wenyi and Luo Jai, these three youths seemed to make the most of their time. Even now, they were still diligently investigating something. The ones who ended up giving Chengyu the most worry were Wei Chen and Steamed Bun. After the afternoon review, they left, and she didn't see them at all after that. She'd said that everyone was free to do their own thing, so of course she felt it would be rude to ask. But as it grew later and later, these two still hadn't returned, and Chengyu gripped the phone in her hand, debating whether or not she should call and ask. At the same time, she listened hard for any sound of their return in the hallway. She would wait 10 more minutes. If they still weren't back in 10 minutes, she would ask where they were. Chen Guo carried this determination, but 10 minutes became 20 and then an hour. By this time, it was already 11:00 at night. Finally, Chen Guo couldn't hold back any longer. She picked up her phone and dialed Wei Chen's number. An unfamiliar ringtone sounded right from the hallway, their back. Chen Guo didn't hang up, instead directly rushing out of the room to look. As expected, in the hallway, Chen Guo saw Wei Chen and Steamed Bun beaming as they walked along. Because his phone was ringing, Wei Chen was currently feeling around in his pocket. When they saw Chen Guo rush out, the two of them casually greeted her, and then Wei Chen pulled out his phone and saw who was calling him. "Looking for me?" Wei Chen asked Chen Guo. "Oh, I saw that you two still weren't back, so I wanted to ask," Chen Guo said, as naturally as she could. She didn't want them to think of her as a worrisome old woman, even though she did feel much calmer seeing their return. "Oh, we were just at that internet cafe at the corner," Wei Chen said. "Why did you two go to an internet cafe?" Chen Guo was confused. "Running a black inn," said Wei Chen. "It's really fun, boss, you should come with us next time." Steamed Bun enthusiastically invited her. Chen Guo was speechless. Running a black inn was a gaming term for something commonly seen in internet cafes. To put it simply, a few players would sit together so that they could see each other's screens and easily communicate offline. With this advantage, they would be able to reach extremely good coordination, and they would bully their opponents, strangers that had been randomly grouped together. This kind of behavior wasn't worthy of being condoned, of course. As a devoted Glory fan, Chen Guo always gave dirty looks to the raucous guests running black inns in her internet cafe. She couldn't drive them out just for doing that, but whenever the internet cafe held events like discount cards, she definitely wouldn't give these people preferential treatment. But now, Team Happy, a professional team that had made it to the finals, two of their pro players had actually gone to an internet cafe to run a black inn. Right now, Chen Guo had only one thing to say to them. "Do you really have to be like this? If only you could do this during a match, that would be great." Steamed Bun actually said this with deep feeling. Chen Guo glared furiously at Wei Chen. This was definitely all his idea. "It's getting late, go to sleep. If we ever have some free time later, we can go again." Wei Chen, completely ignoring her, said goodbye to Steamed Bun. Okay. Steamed Bun cheerfully returned to his own room, but Wei Chen looked at Chen Guo, chuckled and said, "You think we're very low for doing this, don't you?" "Very much so." Chen Guo nodded. "Actually, this is a type of religious practice," Wei Chen said. "What do you mean?" Chen Guo asked. "Next time you can come along," Wei Chen said. "Oh, okay," Chen Guo automatically agreed. Wei Chen smiled, said good night, and also returned to his room. Chen Guo stood there dumbly for another half a minute and felt like crying. Morals, where had her morals gone? What religious practice? This guy was making it up, right? He was just completely and utterly shameless. Just like that, the first rest day passed by. The second day was also free time for everyone. Because there was no strategy meeting like the review, Chen Guo didn't even see everyone. Chen Guo really was very curious as to what everyone was doing, and she really wanted to send a "what's everyone doing" message to the group chat. But restraint. Chen Guo didn't want to bother everyone. In her heart, she truly trusted everyone. Even though these happy players all had different personalities, and some were all sorts of strange, Chen Guo felt that this was a very reliable team. Taking Wei Chen and Steamed Bun running a black inn, for example, Chen Guo believed that it was a sort of religious practice for them, a way for them to relax. As for staying out so late at night, she'd said she was worried, but it might have been more curiosity. So Chen Guo restrained herself. She didn't want her curiosity to ruin everyone's personal rhythms. If there was anything she wanted to know or ask, she could wait until the day the match ended. The second day swung past. On the night of the third day would be the final championship match of this season, and on this day the team would have a team practice for the sake of warm-up. And so, in the training room, Chen Yu saw everyone gathered together for the first time since that review meeting. Nervous. As the final match approached, Chen Yu couldn't help but grow more and more nervous. She was scared that after everyone had worked so hard for a year, they would miss this final step. That disappointment, that frustration, Chen Yu truly had no idea how to face it. The team practice lasted for around 2 hours, but they didn't interact much. The atmosphere was a bit oppressive, but under this atmosphere, Happy's players were fully focused. No one said anything to try and relieve this atmosphere. They reached a sort of harmony with the pressure. Yiziu seemed to be very satisfied with this way of handling the situation. After the 2-hour team practice ended, he was smiling as he began speaking. "Is everyone ready?" Yiziu asked. Some nodded, some spoke. It was all in agreement. "Then let's win this," Yiziu said. Once again they nodded, and then head out. Toward Samsara's home stadium, toward the final match of this season, Happy stepped onto their final journey. The stadium was packed starting very early. Even the pro players had entered the stadium very early and were now waiting patiently for the match's start. For the final match, the victory poll had been opened once again, and this time, what caught people's attention was no longer just the comparison in percentage. This time, the number of people casting votes was incredibly few, far fewer than those of any previous playoffs matches. This was the final championship-deciding match. How could people not pay attention? But to pay attention and abstain from casting a vote, there was naturally only one explanation. Many people didn't know to whom their vote should go. Aside from those who were firmly biased toward one side, those who were neutral or those relying on logic to analyze the question had no way to predict this match's outcome. In the first game, Samsara defeated Happy at Happy's home stadium. Such a strong performance had instantly destroyed the powerhouse Happy image that had been built up after Happy versus Tyranny. Thus, in the second game's vote, Samsara completely suppressed Happy. But then, in the second game, Yiziu led Happy by defeating Zhou Zekai in 1v1, and then in the team competition, all sorts of godly performances shook the stage. People found that they had been very wrong in their assessments that Samsara would win for sure. Happy won in Samsara's demonic home stadium, breaking Samsara's perfect home record. Samsara defeated Happy at Happy's home, and they retaliated by defeating Samsara in their home. On paper, Samsara's strength was greater than Happy's. Anyone would admit this. But if Happy once again had this kind of godlike performance, Happy's unpredictability caused everyone who wanted to rely on logic to become lost. Right now, everyone wanted to use the phrase that commentator Li Yibo often fell back upon when he couldn't clearly determine the situation. Let's wait and see. Wait and see, Glory Pro League Season 10, the championship-deciding final match. Amidst blinding lights and deafening cheers, it began. The two teams' players lined up on stage. The curtain was about to close on the season's journey. Who would be the champion? Samsara. With the home stadium advantage, Samsara's fans took the lead in making noise. Chapter 1640, Inevitable Confrontation. Chapter 1640, Inevitable Confrontation. Translator, Namiyami. Editor, Namiyami. No matter how much support they received on the internet, no matter how many neutral Glory fans were beginning to favor Happy, but in this stadium, the support for Samsara would always be unrivaled. This was their home stadium. Here were their most diehard fans. No matter what, they would never give up on supporting their team. Samsara is the champion. The stadium was filled with such shouts. Perhaps influenced by what had happened yesterday at Culture Square, the Samsara fans in the stadium today very carefully used Samsara as the subject of their cheers. Even though Happy's fans were unwilling to show weakness, it was indeed difficult to take the upper hand when the other side had this kind of momentum. After going through the trials of this season, Happy's fan group now had experience of challenging the opponent's home stadium. As the away team, because of the vast numbers disparity, there was no way to knock over the opponent through sheer sound. In this situation, they had to rely more on chants and banners, creating visual momentum. These, at least, could not be covered no matter what. But there was a big pitfall to this strategy, which was holding up a large sign would block the view of the row or rows sitting right behind. This pitfall largely limited the usage of posters and banners. But today, Happy's fans went ahead with it regardless. In the away team audience section, row after row of signs declared victory, so dense that the section looked like a mountain forest. The section seemed to be entirely banners, no people. Aside from the audience members sitting in the very front, there was practically no row whose line of sight could escape. Even though the match still hadn't officially begun, for the Happy fans to prepare their banners to create such a magnificent sight, it could be seen how conscious the fans were of this match. Their sound couldn't resound in this stadium, but this continuous expanse of banners became the focus of attention in this stadium, and the television broadcast gave them extra screen time. If they hadn't prepared beforehand, this kind of thing could never happen spontaneously, no matter how many fans Samsara had. They had no other choice. They could only bring forth even more volume to fight against Happy's visual momentum. Beneath the clashing swords, the two teams completed the pre-match exchange very calmly. After simple handshakes, however, the new height of pre-match excitement arrived. Because this match would determine to whom the championship belonged, the Alliance arranged for the championship trophy, the symbol of supreme glory, to be revealed before the match. The stadium's lights extinguished all at once, and before the audience even had time to utter shouts, the spotlights all converged on the podium. At some point, the trophy had already been placed there, but under the absolute concentration of light, in this instant, it seemed like the sun hanging in the sky, flashing with infinite radiance. The players, the audience, everyone's gazes were captured by this sight. The spotlights dispersed, the stadium's normal lighting came back on, and instantly everything was back to normal. But everyone's gazes continued to linger on that championship trophy, gazes filled with desire and anticipation. "Fuck, what a cheap gimmick," someone among the pro players complained, sounding extremely scornful, but no one answered. In that instant where the championship trophy had been lit up, whether or not they had won the championship before, every single one of them had felt their hearts stir. This was a gimmick, but it was an extremely effective gimmick. Even for the one who had complained, there had been some longing in his tone, a refusal to resign. This match, this sort of gimmick, it really provoked a certain sadness in their hearts. The match was about to begin, but the two teams didn't immediately return to their player areas. They gathered in front of their respective competitor booths, and everyone looked up toward the giant display screen, waiting for the group arena's random map selection. With a sound, the selection began. Images flashed by on-screen for around 5 seconds before suddenly coming to a halt. A digital voice clearly announced the name of this map, Inevitable Confrontation. The name of this map really fits the occasion. No information was released beforehand about the random maps used in the playoffs. Even the broadcast commentators were only learning about the map now, and the commentary of course began from the name. Championship, finals, an encounter on a narrow road, inevitable confrontation. There was no more description more fitting. And now, the map that had been chosen had this name. The holographic projection and the stadium display screen began a simple overview of this map's layout and characteristics. A narrow valley, a bit twisting but not complex. On both sides were steep and towering cliffs. As for whether they could be climbed, Aside from a Nightwalker carrying a ninjato, it was hard to say. At this time, people would automatically think of Lord Grimm's many changing techniques, but because these cliffs were so high, as soon as they reached the top, they would be too far away to pose any threat at all to those at the bottom. As for whether or not there were any ambush points along the wall, that could not be seen clearly from such a brief introduction. "It doesn't look like there's anything particularly special about this map," Pan Lin said, after seeing this simple overview. There were definitely many maps in the original selection that had this kind of simple feature, and this map had been specially made for the playoffs. If they'd only designed this valley with a few extra twists and turns, there was really nothing new about this at all. Just as everyone was wondering the same question, suddenly, there were screams of murder from the holographic projection. Everyone watched as horses and men appeared at both ends of the canyon, and ambushes also appeared on both mountain walls. Soon, the men and horses met at the center of the canyon and began to fight, killing each other ferociously. On the cliffs, the ambushes activated and all sorts of boulders and wood tumbled down. In a few moments, both armies were completely wiped out. Everyone was stunned. What was this? It surely wasn't an animation just added to complement the name, Inevitable Confrontation, right? This was the finals. They needed to introduce the map information in an orderly way. How could such empty showiness be allowed? So this wasn't some animation created to enhance the atmosphere. This was something that would actually happen on this map. It wasn't just about the topography. They were actually introducing interfering events. Regardless of the outcome of this match, this design would inevitably trigger much discussion and controversy afterward. But at the moment, the audience was very curious to see how the players would respond to such a map with events and NPC interference. Yet right now, there was pitifully little information about this interference. Was the timing of this event completely random or set for a certain time? Would it only happen once per battle or multiple? From their attacks, it seemed like the two groups on opposite ends of the canyon and those on the cliff walls formed three separate teams. What would be their attitudes toward the players' characters? Too much information that was needed to understand this map was not given before the match, and because of the ingenuity of this design, acquiring information about this map would be much more complicated than simply observing the terrain characteristics. The first and even the second players of both teams would have to do a lot of work in this aspect. So who would the two teams send up? Everyone was very curious. But on television, commentators Pan Lin and Li Yibo were very evasive. Although they had some ideas in their minds, they didn't dare speak easily. They had truly been face-slapped too many times. This time, continuing to send out Yiziu first is a very appropriate choice for Happy. Over in the pro player section, they didn't have anything holding them back, and after discussion, they all agreed on this prediction. Facing such a complex situation, it would be best to send out Yiziu, someone who was experienced and had extremely good awareness. While gaining information, he had a very high chance of winning battles in such unpredictable situations. As for Samsara, from Happy, Yiziu was the best choice. Everyone recognized this in a glance. Not only did it make sense, it could continue the psychological oppression that his win streak had established. On the other hand, Samsara was definitely aware of Happy's best choice, so their choice of player would, to a certain extent, have to counter it. Who was most appropriate on Samsara's side? While everyone was discussing, Samsara's Jiang Ba reported their first player to the judge. And at the same time, from their roster, Sun Xiang was already walking toward the competitor booth.